Chapter 2607. Stars of the Auction in the Individual Room. Sir, here are the first 4 stages of the Transmigration Sword Formation, the Golden Rock, and also the primordial stones for the items you've sold after deducting our commission. It's all here, please check carefully. A black chief passed an interspatial ring to Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang took the ring, he took a quick look and nodded slightly. The items he had sold in Star Picking Pavilion, including the spiritual stone staff, had made him a total of 12,120,000 primordial stones. There were close to 75 million primordial stones in the interspatial ring, after deducting the 45 million primordial stones for the 4 stages of sword formation, the Golden Rock, and commissions paid. He was also in possession of a divine elixir pill and various cultivation materials that amounted to 25 million primordial stones. In other words, Jian Wushuang had exactly 100 million primordial stones. I'm hoping that the 100 million primordial stones is enough to help me purchase the stately painting, mumbled Jian Wushuang to himself. The auction continued. However, the items that were displayed thereafter did not motivate Jian Wushuang to bid, despite there were quite many valuable ones that caught the heavenly ultimate god's attention, who competed for them. Time flew by and the auction had gone on for a full 3 days. Many treasures had been sold in those 3 days, but the enthusiasm of those experts taking part in the auction did not even decrease. However, Jian Wushuang began to feel uneasy as time went by. It's been 3 days, but the stately painting's bidding still hasn't started. Could it be? Jian Wushuang thought of a possibility that made him feel very uneasy. At that moment, the Golden Chief cleared his throat on the display stage and spoke with his incredibly resonant voice. Honored guests, this auction has come to its finale. The next items are the 3-star treasures of this auction. His words immediately lit up the enthusiasm in the house. Many experts had their eyes burning with desire. Stars of the auction, it's finally starting? The 3 most valuable items featured are finally going to be auctioned. Thanks. I wonder what are the differences between these 3 items? The experts were incredibly curious. Even heavenly ultimate gods on the 3rd floor, the experts from Nangwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang clan evidently became very serious before straightening their sitting posture. Usual treasures could hardly catch the attention of those top powers of the Danyang Holy Domain. As an example, very few of the many treasures being auctioned earlier could spark their interests and make them bid for it. However, the last 3 items were a different story. The 3 stars of the auction even sparked some curiosity in them. Contrary to the general emotions, Jian Wushuang sat in the individual room with a terribly gloomy face. What I fear most has happened. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists as his gaze turned frosty. Earlier on, he caught words from the Black Chief that the stately painting would be auctioned in the event. As for when it would be auctioned, the Black Chief did not tell him due to the Star Picking Pavilion's rules. Hence Jian Wushuang had no idea either. However, as the auction reached its finale, only 3 treasures were left, and since the stately painting had not appeared, it was clearly part of the 3 stars of the auction. Stars of the auction? What did star mean? Naturally, they would be the most valuable items and would receive the highest bids in the auction. For the Star Picking Pavilion to consider the stately painting a star of the auction, its final bid would be very high. Moreover, the heavenly ultimate gods on the 3rd floor and the experts from powerful clans would surely notice that treasure. They most probably would stand up and compete for it. Trying to outbid those powerful clans, Jian Wushuang was truly not confident at all with that little bit of wealth he possessed. Let's see. I'll have to think of other ways if it's not going to work. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. On the display stage, honored guests, we'll now begin the auctioning of the 1st star. Please take a look. The Golden Chief waved his hand as an ancient scroll painting that was turning yellow immediately appeared on the display stage. The scroll painting looked ordinary at a glance, with nothing fascinating about it, such that nobody probably would lay their eyes on it, even if they saw it on the streets. However, none of the partakers in this auction were ordinary people. Naturally, they could notice the unusual qualities of the scroll painting. Its extraordinary qualities originated from its energy, so ancient and mysterious that no one could figure it out. Everyone was staring at the scroll painting, but they felt as though they were staring into thin air, or a shroud of mist. It was truly a strange feeling. Treasure. This is absolutely a unique and extraordinary treasure. Right away, the experts in the auction passed their judgments. Although they could not tell what the scroll painting was, they were certain it was an incredible treasure. While in the individual room, Jian Wushuang's pupils contracted immediately the moment he saw the painting. His body uncontrollably shook. Nobody else could identify the scroll painting, but he could with just a glance. That scroll painting had accompanied him for a long period of time. It even helped him out of limbo time and again. The stately painting. It was his ultimate treasure. Even till then, he could still feel a connection with the stately painting in its current situation. The sense of connection was still very strong. Were it not for the restrictive shield around the edges of the display stage blocking his energy projection, he could have immediately reconnected with the stately painting, and it would most certainly become excited. My old brother, we finally met again. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists, his nails buried into his flesh. I take that all of you have recognized the extraordinary quality of this scroll painting. If that's the case, please let me make an introduction. The Golden Chief's voice resonated in the auction house. This item is called Stately Painting, and was passed to the Star-Picking Pavilion by a territorial lord of a stellar region in Danyang Holy Domain. According to the territorial lord, the origin of this treasure is extremely mysterious. It did not originate from any ruin, nor did it come from any expert's offspring. Instead, it was taken out of a shattered void while a pair of ultimate gods were fighting. The experts in the auction were rather shocked upon hearing his words. The void shattered, and the treasure appeared in that shattered void. Chapter 2608. Auctioning the stately painting. We have researched it since obtaining this treasure, and had uncovered a message from it. The message is, the stately painting, the endless mountains and streams, dividing the world into 9 continents. The mountains and rivers as the palms and the 9 continents as the seal which created the world. The Golden Chief paused on purpose when he reached that point of his speech. As expected, it caused quite a stir in the auction with countless experts standing up in an uproar. The stately painting, the endless mountains and streams, dividing the world into 9 continents. The mountains and rivers as the palms and the 9 continents as the seal which created the world. It was a simple message, however. It was very domineering. Treasure, an absolute rare treasure. Many had their eyes burning with desire. Too bad. Although the Star-Picking Pavilion managed to extract the message from the treasure, recognize its uniqueness, and knowing that it's indeed an extraordinary treasure, we could not make it recognize us as its master despite the various methods we took. However, that doesn't prove anything as if it meets the right person. Perhaps the treasure might recognize him as its master, said the Golden Chief. The experts all nodded. There were indeed certain extraordinary treasures that would choose its own master. It only proved that the treasure did not look too highly upon him, if that person could not make it recognize him as its master. However, if that person was fated for this treasure, it would naturally identify him as its master upon meeting him. None of the experts in the Star-Picking Pavilion could make the stately painting recognize a master. It only proved that the treasure had very high standards and naturally made its price shockingly high. A great number of experts in the auction, including the 2nd and 3rd floor experts, began to feel excited about it. Let's begin the bidding for the first star of the auction, the stately painting. The starting price is 100 million primordial stones. The Golden Chief projected his voice. As soon as the starting price was announced, a collective exclamation of shock resonated in the entire auction. The starting price itself was already 100 million primordial stones, and that was a first for the auction. The starting price had shattered most people's desire toward the stately painting. Even though there were numerous experts in the auction, those who immediately could present 100 million primordial stones were far and few. Moreover, the 100 million primordial stones were only the starting price. Jian Wushuang's face turned slightly gloomy when he heard the starting price. However, he immediately sat down slowly, as though he had already calmed down. In his eyes, though, a sharp light was violently piercing out. There's absolutely no way I will be able to obtain it through the auction, since the starting price is already 100 million. If that's the case, I'll have to resort to other methods, mumbled Jian Wushuang to himself. Although 100 million primordial stones was an exorbitant starting price, there were quite a few people in the third floor's rooms who could afford it. Those people had started bidding 150 million primordial stones. A young master dressed in an expensive purple long robe sat casually in an individual room while holding a paper fan. Next to him was a sitting figure that projected waves of overpowering energy. The young master wore a slight smile before he murmured, "The stately painting is truly extraordinary and worthy of me taking action. Even if the treasure doesn't recognize anyone as its master after bringing it back to Life and Death Tower, we could still give it away as a present and not lose much. However, if we are lucky to absorb the treasure, we will gain a lot. 200 million. A statue-like dark figure standing in an individual room. The figure was clad in black robes as cold energy seeped out from him as he stared at the stately painting on the display stage with a strange light in his eyes. A sense of greed could be seen deep inside his pupils. 300 million primordial stones. A bald and plump teenager holding a fruit made his bid. A heaven ultimate god old man frowned next to him and said, "Master Uncle, we didn't bring many primordial stones this time. Only a rough total of 150 million, and we're only at the first star of the auction. Although the stately painting is truly extraordinary, purchasing it comes with risks. If we spend too much to buy this item, we'll only be able to watch others bid for the next 2 stars of the auction." "I know that." The bald teenager continued munching on his fruit and smiled demonically before saying, "It's exactly because we didn't bring a lot of primordial stones that I purposely raised the bidding price, so that the Dongfang clan and young palace master of Nanwu Palace will competitively offering even higher bids to fight for the stately painting. It will then put us in advantage when we bid for the next 2 treasures." The bald young man was not too interested in the stately painting, but still kept bidding a higher price. He immediately raised the bid to 500 million, when the young palace master of Nanwu Palace made an offer of 400 million primordial stones. The price continued, and very quickly shot to a sky-high price under the competition between these high rollers. At that moment, in an unremarkable individual room on the 3rd floor of the auction house, an expert was in that room, but if anyone were observant enough, they would discover that he did not bid once to fight for even a single treasure since the auction started. Even after the stately painting appeared, the man in that individual room did not show the slightest bit of interest. In the room was a simple-looking white-haired old man clad in gray. The white-haired old man with murky eyes was sitting still like a meditating old monk. Nobody could tell if his eyes were opened or closed. Standing before him were 3 people. Among them was the purple-robed man, the supervisor of the Star-Picking Pavilion's Narcissus Territory branch. The other 2 were that branch's golden chiefs. The bald man was one of the 2 golden chiefs who had a relationship with San Shouwang and showed a certain interest in Jian Wushuang. The golden chiefs of Star-Picking Pavilion enjoyed a high status in the auction house, since there were only 3 golden chiefs at the Star-Picking Pavilion's Narcissus Territory branch. The supervisor held the highest authority at the branch, of course, that even the golden chiefs had to answer to him. His ability was also shockingly powerful, as he was at the very limits of high-level Heaven Ultimate God, with only a step away from reaching peak Heaven Ultimate God. However, the supervisor and his 2 golden chiefs stood respectfully before the white-haired old man with their heads bowed extremely low without showing any defiance at that moment. Chapter 2609. Senior Meng, to what do we owe this honor? The supervisor of Star-Picking Pavilion respectfully asked. "I'm here for the stately painting," said the white-haired old man slowly. "The stately painting? Didn't headquarters pass the stately painting to us for auction?" The purple-robed man frowned. The white-haired old man, Senior Meng, lightly spoke. "It's true, but the stately painting is different from other treasures. I've investigated it with those from the headquarters, and all of us reached the same conclusion. The stately painting is a treasure that completely surpassed all levels of heavenly treasure, which is to say it's at least a holy treasure. Moreover, it's absolutely not an ordinary holy treasure. What? The faces of the purple supervisor and his two golden chiefs turned pale from shock. Surpassing the levels of a heavenly treasure? A holy treasure? Even among undying saints, there were only an extremely few who had exceptionally strong abilities or heaven-defying luck for them to own one or two holy treasures. The completely shocked purple supervisor asked, "Senior Meng, why did the headquarters let us sell it since it's a holy treasure?" He only complied with the order from the headquarters in asking them to put the stately painting up for auction. However, the star-picking pavilion's headquarters never told them the treasure's actual level. Only when they heard it from Senior Meng were they shocked. That was a holy treasure. What was it doing in an auction like that? Furthermore, those who were fighting over the item were only a bunch of earthly ultimate gods and heavenly ultimate gods. Senior Meng indifferently said, "This matter is out of the ordinary. After we have appraised the stately painting as a very powerful and unique holy treasure, we spent a fortune to hire someone very important in helping us to make the stately painting recognize a master. That person has also agreed to help. However, he found that the stately painting has somehow already established a hidden connection with someone in the end. It's evident the stately painting is an owned item for it to possess that kind of connection." An owned item? The purple supervisor was startled. The treasure isn't something we can cultivate and absorb easily since it already has an owner. According to its history, it was coincidentally taken out of a void. We could then determine the stately painting has lost its master due to a certain reason. It's exactly because of that we dare not even keep this treasure in the star-picking pavilion any longer. This treasure is of an extremely high level after all. Its master who could cultivate, absorb, and control it must be someone who has extraordinary abilities. He's most probably a peak undying saint who possesses extremely terrifying abilities. He could also be in existence like Sword Lord Tong Xian, who stood above other undying saints. He could even be someone who has surpassed those saints, a titanic figure who enjoys a huge reputation in the entire ancient god domain. A super expert like that isn't someone who should be crossed, even for star-picking pavilion. If the stately painting continues to stay in the star-picking pavilion, we can't guarantee the powerhouse won't show up at our door one day by tracing the hidden connection. We will be in deep trouble by then. Therefore, we have decided to send this stately painting back to Danyang Holy Domain, where it was first discovered after our discussion, by selling the item in the Holy Domain's biggest auction. The news will spread once the treasure is sold. If its owner is currently in Danyang Holy Domain, he will naturally look for it after hearing the news and ask for the item to be returned to him. Even if he isn't in Danyang Holy Domain, the treasure won't have much to do with our star-picking pavilion, as he won't find it with us if its master comes to our doorsteps, spoke Senior Meng calmly. Is that so? The purple supervisor and his two golden chiefs took a nervous breath while listening to him. They began to feel pity toward those who were still trying to outbid each other over the stately painting. All of them thought that the stately painting was an extremely high-level treasure, which was indeed true. However, the stately painting was also a dangerous item that nobody should touch at the same time. If someone obtained it, he might be visited by a certain superior being. Senior Meng mumbled, "The reason I personally came today is to see who will obtain the stately painting in the end. After that, I shall follow that person so that I can perhaps meet the superior being." The purple supervisor and his two golden chiefs dared not dare say more. In the auction, the bidding price of the stately painting had gone up to 1,180,000,000, and it was still going up. However, there were only two people left who were still bidding. The two of them were Namwu Palace's young palace master and the beautiful lady from Dongfang clan. 1,200,000,000 primordial stones. The beautiful lady from Dongfang clan bid again, as her cold voice resonated in the auction house at the same time. Young palace master, it's just a unique treasure. Although its level is most probably high, it doesn't easily recognize a master. Do you really want to keep competing against me? If the next two treasures are even better than this stately painting, Will you have enough capital to bid for those? Haha. I don't need you to worry about whether I have enough capital to bid for the next 2 items. Truth be told, I recently visited an extraordinary ruin and discovered quite a bit of resource before coming here. Even though they aren't worth a lot, they are still worth nearly 2 billion. Even if the stately painting still doesn't recognize a master after I obtained it, I could just treat it as a wasted trip to the ruins. The young palace master of Namwu Palace laughed heartily. 1,300 million. The beautiful lattice face turned gloomy after she heard what he said. The Dongfang clan had a deep financial foundation, and their wealth truly spoke louder than words. The beautiful lady happened to be one of the people who had control over the clan's properties. Hence the amount she could control was extremely large. Though however large, it was still unwise to spend more than 1 billion primordial stones to purchase a unique treasure that contained certain risks. 1,300 million primordial stones was her limit. Forget it. I shall fulfill your desire since you crave the stately painting so much, said the beautiful lady before falling silent, who had apparently given up on competing. Haha, thank you. Namwu Palace's young palace master laughed. Finally, the stately painting fell into his hands with a final bidding price of 1,300 million primordial stones. My goodness. The last treasure is actually a Huangji golden pill. That's crazy. Those 4 powers are gonna go nuts. Waves of exclamations could be heard from the individual rooms. It was indeed true. The faces of those from Namwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang clan turned bright red, and became breathless from the excitement when they saw the golden elixir pill. It's a Huangji golden pill? What an auction house star-picking pavilion is. The young palace master of Namwu Palace had bright lights shining through his eyes. He immediately stood up and said, I have to get this Huangji golden pill no matter what it takes. Damn it. If I knew the last item is the Huangji golden pill, I won't have bought that sole defensive treasure for my brother. I've spent 1,800 million primordial stones in one go to purchase it. Now I don't have much left. The expression of the Dongfang clan's beautiful lady froze. Quick! Immediately inform the clan, and tell them to collect as many primordial stones for me as possible by all means. They can also bring cultivation resources of equal values. The heavenly ultimate gods of Dongfang clan nodded in full commitment. They knew it was an important matter. The experts learned more about the Huangji golden pill, following the golden chief, introducing it in the auction. A Huangji golden pill was extremely well known in the ancient god domain, with its shockingly wide usage. It only worked on ultimate gods, with its effects almost equivalent to that of a divine demon nirvana elixir for divine demons. Divine demon nirvana elixir could help ordinary divine demons make a breakthrough in their cultivation in an extremely profound way. As for the Huangji golden pill, it could help ultimate god experts raise their cultivation level. Moreover, those who were below heavenly ultimate god level could have an 80% chance of making a breakthrough to the next level after taking a Huangji golden pill. For those who were above the heavenly ultimate god level, the probability of making a breakthrough was still extremely high after taking a Huangji golden pill. Most importantly, it even had great effects on grand ultimate gods. According to hearsay, if a powerful peak heavenly ultimate god took a Huangji golden pill, there was a 50% chance he could make a breakthrough to the grand ultimate god level. If a primary level grand ultimate god had eaten a Huangji golden pill, he would have nearly a 30% probability to make a breakthrough to high-level grand ultimate god. Even for a high-level grand ultimate god, he would still have a 10% probability to reach toward peak grand ultimate god by taking the Huangji golden pill. With such effects, it was extremely attractive to every heavenly ultimate god and grand ultimate god. Especially for the top powers of Danyang Holy Domain, Namwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan. There has been no undying saint holding the fort at Danyang Holy Domain ever since the fall of Crimson Stone Saint. The Crimson Stone Fort was only superficially seen as the authority, while those few top powers only had a few grand ultimate god as their strongest expert. Chapter 26:11. Big problem, a grand ultimate god was just too rarely seen. If any of the top powers have even 10 grand ultimate gods, it was considered very impressive. Each of those grand ultimate gods was also the top power's main support pillars, as they possessed the highest battle strength level. Losing even a single one of them was an unimaginably huge loss. At the same time, it could bring them up a level if they could have one more grand ultimate god. Therefore, the Huangji Golden Pill, which offered a peak heaven ultimate, got a 50% chance to make a breakthrough into grand ultimate god, was extremely important to them. The auction for the Huangji Golden Pill soon began. The starting bid itself was already 1 billion primordial stones. In a very short period, the price had gone up to 2 billion, which was double the starting bid. Moreover, the experts in the third floor individual rooms, especially those who were representing the top powers, had been competing with each other fiercely, hence the price continued to climb. This is insane. That's too crazy. It's already 30 billion primordial stones, and yet they continue to bid? 30 billion is an unimaginable number for me. Waves of exclamations were filling the auction house. As time flew by, the Huangji Golden Pill's price had climbed up to an astronomical 50 billion. At that rate, there were not many left who could continue bidding. In the end, it was again the young palace master of Nanwu Palace and the beautiful lady from Dongfang clan who competed against each other. The beautiful lady coldly asked, "How many resources can we move around? We only have 52 billion primordial stones, when adding on to the amount the clan had temporarily transferred to us with what we have now. That's everything we can gather in such a short time," said one of the heaven ultimate gods. 52 billion. The beautiful lady made her final bid without hesitation. At that moment, Nanwu Palace's young palace master wore a dark expression, as he was also calculating the number of resources he could control. "Fortunately, I found quite a bit of stuff at the ruins. Even though I have spent quite a lot on the stately painting, I could still outbid the Dongfang clan woman with the remaining 60 billion, or so when adding on to my properties and the resources that were prepared beforehand by the palace. 53 billion. As the young palace master made his bid again, the Dongfang clan's room turned silent. Not competing anymore? The young palace master of Nanwu Palace shot a cold glance at Dongfang clan's room. "Humph." A cold harumph came out of that individual room. "You truly are the young palace master of Nanwu Palace to bring so many resources with you. You win this time. But don't get cocky now, as even though you spent an incredible amount on this Huangji Golden Pill, it's still a question whether you safely can bring it back to Nanwu Palace." "Oh, are you trying to scare me, Madame Dongfang?" Nanwu Palace's young palace master coldly said. "I'm not trying to scare you, of course. After all, how many in the Danyang Holy Domain can really scare the young palace master of Nanwu Palace? However, Huangji Golden Pill is such a precious item, and many desperately desire it. I'm merely reminding you out of kindness, due to the friendship between the Dongfang clan and Nanwu Palace. I have no desire to worry about the rest, so take care." As the beautiful lady finished speaking, she stood up and started leaving the room. The auction for the last star treasure had ended, which indicated the end of the auction event. Naturally, the beautiful lady had no reason to continue staying there. Not only her, but also most of those experts who took part in the auction left with sighs and feelings of loss. Of course, several experts did not immediately leave, especially those in the third floor individual rooms. Most of those powerful heaven ultimate gods did not immediately leave. Chapter 26:12. Battle begins. Transmit a message into the palace, and tell them to send reinforcements, said the young palace master of Nanwu Palace. One of the heaven ultimate gods of Nanwu Palace, immediately did as he was ordered. The auction had ended completely. Most experts had left. Only a few top experts were still staying in Star-Picking Pavilion. The people of Nanwu Palace were still there as well. Even though many experts were lusting over Huangji Golden Pill, they dared not take immediate action, and had to control themselves, as they were in a Star-Picking Pavilion branch after all. They were waiting for the people of Nanwu Palace to leave the Star-Picking Pavilion. Jian Wushuang was waiting quietly as well. The wait took a total of 10 days. After 10 days, the young palace master of Nanwu Palace finally began to depart. As soon as the Nanwu Palace people stepped out of star-picking pavilion, a large number of experts including Jian Wushuang immediately followed behind. That's a lot of people. There are too many experts targeting him. Jian Wushuang's eyes were showing worries. As he glided along, he expanded his soul power and sensed the energy of the experts around him in detail. There were 100 of them, at the Earth Ultimate God realm or above. Even though Earth Ultimate Gods were just there to watch and did not plan to join in the action, there were still more than 20 Heaven Ultimate Gods pursuers. Not for a minute did Jian Wushuang ever think the 20 over Heaven Ultimate God was there to just watch instead of taking action. Besides, that number was only those who Jian Wushuang's soul power could sense. He believed more experts were hiding in the surrounding void, who have kept their presence hidden. With this many experts targeting Huangji Golden Pill, when the battle starts, Jian Wushuang shuddered. The crowd followed behind the young palace master. They very soon left the city and arrived at the wide borderless void. They're probably going to start, mumbled Jian Wushuang to himself. As he expected, he could sense several Heaven Ultimate Gods' speed accelerated and caught up to block the path of those Nanwu Palace men within the sensing parameters of his soul power. In only a short moment, you're only a few Heaven Ultimate Gods and dare touch Nanwu Palace. Perhaps you're sick of living. The Nanwu Palace's young palace master's growl resonated between heaven and earth. Following the growl, the Heaven Ultimate Gods unleashed their heaven-shaking divine aura and took action. The big battle began in a blink. Boom, 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 boom. The terrifying booming sounds exploded one after another, while clanging noises could be heard from the void ahead. The noises resonated throughout the heavens, and the immense divine power expanded to a great distance. Although Jian Wushuang and the rest of the Earth Ultimate Gods, who were there to watch the action, were quite a distance away from the battlegrounds, they could still feel the intense clashing of energy in the fight, which made their hearts pounded violently. Even Jian Wushuang was shocked. He was not considered weak at that point when it came to ability. Although his level was quite low at just a peak Ultimate God, his battle strength was strong enough to face a peak Earth Ultimate God. Therefore, he was still considered very powerful even when standing among actual peak Earth Ultimate Gods. However, the void ahead was filled with not just 1 or 2 Heaven Ultimate Gods battling, but more than 10. Such a battle was really not something he could interfere in. Excluding the young palace master, Nanwu Palace only has 4 Heaven Ultimate Gods. Although they are very strong, they are facing the attack of a dozen Heaven Ultimate Gods, and won't be able to withstand it. In addition, there are still quite a few Heaven Ultimate Gods in the surrounding void, who are drooling over Huangji Golden Pill, but yet to take action. Nanwu Palace seems to be in a less than ideal situation. However, the Nanwu Palace people aren't fools either. They probably know that they are being watched. The fact that they dare walk out of star-picking pavilion must mean they have something to rely on. If my guess is right, there have to be quite a few Nanwu Palace experts hiding somewhere in the surrounding void. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and looked around. Just as he expected, when the battle only went on for a short moment, and the 4 Heaven Ultimate Gods were at a disadvantage. Boom, boom, boom. 10 waves of overpowering energy suddenly burst in from one direction. The sudden appearance of the 10 men left the Heaven Ultimate Gods in battle shocked beyond belief. Even the observers outside the battlefield were incredibly surprised. The shock was only natural because the lineup of those 10 was too powerful. Among the 10 men, 8 of them were Heaven Ultimate Gods while the other 2 were a blonde youth and red-bearded strong-looking man with a battle axe. The energy they were projecting was far beyond the Heaven Ultimate Gods, and reaching an all-new level. Grand Ultimate Gods. The 2 of them were complete Grand Ultimate Gods in the flesh and blood. As soon as the 2 Grand Ultimate Gods and 8 Heaven Ultimate Gods arrived, the men from Nanwu Palace, including the young palace master, rushed over to them. They were no doubt also from Nanwu Palace. 2 Grand Ultimate Gods, 8 Heaven Ultimate Gods. What a lineup! Jian Wushuang clenched his fists. The many expert observers around were also exclaiming. This is grand. So grand. Namwu Palace is truly worthy of its reputation. They could afford to send over such a lineup in one go. No wonder the young palace master dared come out of the star-picking pavilion. Looks like Namwu Palace has set its mind on keeping the Huangji golden pill. The crowd exclaimed all together. In the middle of the battlefield, the dozen of heaven ultimate gods who attacked Namwu Palace was in trouble. You're really tired of living since you dare target Namwu Palace. Kill 'em all. The 10 men who came from Namwu Palace immediately attacked, under the 2 grand ultimate gods' leadership. The table turned in an instant. On the edge of the battlefield, the slender gray-clad white-haired senior Meng squinted and stood in the void. Behind him were the very respectful star-picking pavilion's purple supervisor and his 3 golden chiefs. Naturally, they very clearly saw everything that transpired on the battlefield. That's Namwu Palace for you, sending out 2 grand ultimate gods and 8 heaven ultimate gods in one go. Looks like no one can stop them from keeping Huangji golden pill, exclaimed the purple supervisor. Haha, it's not that simple. Senior Meng smiled faintly. The puzzled purple supervisor asked, Senior Meng, do you mean that things might change? I can tell from the looks of it. Chapter 26:13. Let's do it They're from the Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower and Dongfang Clan. The purple-robed supervisor's heart shook. Danyang Holy Domain has been a mess since Crimson Stone Saint's death. The top cultivation sects have always been competing covertly against each other, and very few of them would fight overtly. However, a Huangji golden pill was all it took to make them fight. Senior Meng sneered and continued. No matter how fierce they might be fighting, it has nothing to do with the star-picking pavilion, of course. What caught my interest is the stately painting. I don't know if the stately painting's owner will appear in this battle. The battle had reached a feverish stage. Although the strong lineup of experts from Namwu Palace caused a commotion, they were not the only ones who came well prepared. The Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfeng Clan had also come prepared. The 3 top cultivation sects took action at the same time, and it was worth mentioning that they were working tacitly. Namwu Palace fell into a disadvantage under the pressure of those 3 top sections. In the void outside the battlefield, Jian Wushuang was closely watching the battle. There are dozens of heaven ultimate gods and 5 grand ultimate gods in this battle. There's nothing I can do to disturb the battle, not even a chance for me to fish in troubled waters. Jian Wushuang frowned. It's almost impossible for me to sneak into the battlefield with so many pairs of eyes watching and kill the young palace master of Namwu Palace for his interspatial ring unless I use that trick. Jian Wushuang groaned secretly. He still had a trump card, which was something extremely terrifying and unusual. It was very risky for him to play that card because of its extraordinary and shocking nature. He might fall into a dead end should anything go very wrong. Therefore, he hesitated and struggled to make a decision. However, he did not take long to make his decision. I finally found the stately painting, and it's now with the Namwu Palace's young palace master. Even if any of those on the battlefield manage to get it today, they will not be able to claim ownership. Hence there will be a possibility it might be transferred to another person. It'll be extremely difficult for me to locate it again if it goes to a high-ranking and powerful expert. I can't miss it since the opportunity is right in front of me now. Let's do it. A hint of madness was driving Jian Wushuang to make the decision, but he was also quite determined. Thereafter, his figure slowly receded into the void behind. He retreated to an extremely quiet and empty place before changing his outfit. Initially, he was wearing a golden robe while carrying a longsword without masking his appearance and looking very young. However, he soon had turned into a mysterious expert completely shrouded in a black robe, with a black ferocious-looking mask over his face. He had completely kept his breath of power concealed, while leaving no traces that could reveal his identity. He then slowly walked towards the battlefield. The war was still going on fiercely on the battlefield. The brawny red-bearded man from Namwu Palace furiously said, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan. Well, you'd better make sure I leave my body behind on this battlefield today. Otherwise, I'll make the 3 of you pay the price. The Grand Ultimate God from Divine Demon Sect coldly exclaimed. Haha, are you threatening us? Do you think Nanwu Palace is the Crimson Stone Fort? Even if it's the Crimson Stone Fort, it's now in a mess and can no longer threaten us. What can a small Nanwu Palace do? Don't talk nonsense with him anymore and just kill him. The Nanwu Palace won't hand over the Huangji Golden Pill obediently if we don't teach him a lesson, said the Grand Ultimate God from Dongfang Clan. Yes, although we probably can't kill both Grand Ultimate Gods of Nanwu Palace, we can still find ways to kill the Heaven Ultimate Gods and their young Palace Master. I bet the Palace Master will go crazy if the young Palace Master died, said a cold old man with a sneer. He was the Life and Death Tower's Grand Ultimate God. Haha, let's kill them. The experts from the 3 top sects were no longer holding back and began fighting without reservation. Countless experts watched the battle, but none dared to intervene. It was at that moment, a black-robed man with a black ferocious-looking mask emerged slowly from the surrounding void and walked towards the battlefield. They could not sense the black-robed man's aura, and no one even noticed him when he first appeared in the void. The people around him finally noticed his presence when he appeared at the battlefield's peripheral. Who's that person? Is he fighting for the Huangji Golden Pill as well? Black robe? Black mask. He's probably worried that these top sects will one day seek revenge with him, so he deliberately covers up his appearance. Maybe he's not that strong after all. Although many experts had noticed the black-robed man, they did not pay much attention to him. The Huangji Golden Pill was of great use to Heaven Ultimate Gods, and even Grand Ultimate Gods. It had attracted the attention of the many experts on the battlefield. Hence it did not raise caution that someone else was also interested. The people who were watching the battle, and the experts who were madly slaying away on the battlefield both felt the same, with no one taking the black-robed man seriously. The black-robed man walked to the edge of the battlefield and slowly stopped. Next, boom! A unique but supreme pressure came from the black-robed man without warning. The pressure was not from the breath of divine power, nor was it the divine aura. Instead, it was coming from his life rating, the type of pressure from a supreme being. The black-robed man discharged the pressure, and it instantly spread into the 9 skies and 10 earths, before completely enshrouding the world. Heaven and earth were instantly shaken up as the huge world and space-time were disrupted and violently shook. The violent wind was so strong that it was driving the world, and everything else within the world to worship that black-robed man. The battle that was going on seemed to have instantly died down, due to the emergence of his life-rating pressure. All the experts from Nanwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan were staring at Jian Wushuang, along with those heavenly ultimate gods and 5 grand ultimate gods. Their eyes showed an inconceivable horror and terror. Their bodies were trembling. Thump! Thump! Everyone started kneeling. Chapter 26:14. Life Conquers All. In addition to those people who fought on the battlefield, many experts and Earth Ultimate Gods, who stood watching from a distance outside the battlefield, including a few Heaven Ultimate Gods, all knelt with their eyes widened in surprise. Even Star-Picking Pavilion's purple-robed supervisor and his 3 golden chiefs in the secluded void could not control their legs, joining the others in kneeling. The only person barely enduring the pressure and keeping himself from kneeling was Senior Meng. This pressure. Even I can barely stop myself from kneeling? Senior Meng stared at his trembling legs and took a sharp breath of cold air. He was a genuine undying saint, and also the most powerful expert at that moment. That was probably the reason he was able to keep himself up. In addition, he was quite far away from the battlefield where the life-rating pressure was mainly asserting on before disseminated to its surrounding void. Therefore it was not as strong in his current location, and somewhat allowed him to resist the pressure. However, he truly felt fear in him. This person. Senior Meng looked with a terrified expression at the mysterious black-robed man, who was at the edge of the battlefield. The other experts present had also stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to that black-robed man. The experts, including the 5 grand ultimate gods from those 4 top sects, were frantically struggling to stand up, but appeared weak under the extreme life-rating pressure. They felt as though they were not facing a human cultivator, but the boundless world or universe, as though they were just some unremarkable ants in the infinitely wide world. Expert. Super expert. Is he an undying saint? No. Even an undying saint will never be able to oppress grand ultimate gods like us and force us to worship him on our knees. His oppressive pressure is so extraordinary and nothing like divine power. It's something even more terrifying and intimidating than divine power pressure. It's not something within the capabilities of an undying saint. This person is definitely above the undying saint. A super expert above the undying saint? My goodness. Could he be after the Huangji golden pill as well? That can't be right. Even if it's a treasure worth 100, or even 1,000 times more valuable than the Huangji golden pill, it's insignificant in the face of such a powerful person, let alone the Huangji golden pill. The experts were soon in suffocation. Their bodies trembled from feeling terrified, but no one dared to utter even a single word. They could only grumble and complain in their hearts, while trying to guess the reason such a super expert was there. None dared to speak for fear of irritating the super expert. The battlefield fell into complete silence with those countless experts surrendering themselves to the mysterious black-robed expert. Suddenly, the mysterious black-robed expert moved. He moved slowly like he was sauntering in a garden, and arrived at the battlefield's center in just a few steps. He went up to the Nanwu Palace's young palace master. The Nanwu Palace's young palace master was no longer in his usual posture, as he was prostrating with his head hung low, without even daring to look up at the mysterious black-robed expert. Nanwu Palace's young palace master remained in that posture until the mysterious black-robed expert finally stopped in front of him. The black-robed expert slowly stretched out his palm. The young palace master was frightened and said, "Sir, I've already given the Huangji golden pill to Elder Hung. The Huangji golden pill is with that person over there." The young palace master pointed his finger to the blonde youth next to him, who was one of the grand ultimate gods from Nanwu Palace. The young palace master thought that Huangji golden pill might not be safe in his hands. Hence he had given it to the Nanwu Palace grand ultimate god for safekeeping before the battle. He thought the mysterious black-robed expert was after the Huangji golden pill, so he pointed the mysterious black-robed expert toward it. Unexpectedly, the mysterious black-robed expert did not even glance at the blonde youth. His exposed cold eyes remained looking down on the young palace master. His low and hoarse voice emerged from behind the mask. "The stately painting in your hand. Hand over it now, and it'll spare your life." The stately painting? The Nanwu Palace young palace master was startled. The experts present were stunned. Everyone thought the mysterious black-robed expert was also after the Huangji golden pill, but they were surprised that his target was the stately painting. Did he say his stately painting? Many of them reflected on the mysterious black-robed expert's words. Senior Meng's eyes were twinkling in the void not far away. So it's exactly as I expected. The stately painting indeed has a master, and someone who can maneuver such a holy treasure must be a great cultivator. Probably a top-tier undying saint. He's probably someone invincible who surpasses the undying saint level. His appearance even made an undying saint like me feel compelled to kneel and worship him despite such a far distance between both of us. This level of strength must have exceeded the level of an undying saint. He's indeed an invincible expert. I didn't expect to see a super expert like this again in my lifetime. I can now die without regrets. Senior Meng softly sighed. The still kneeling star-picking tower purple-robed executive and his 3 golden chiefs behind Senior Meng were so cautious they dared not even breath out loudly. "What's going on? Did you not hear what I've said?" The black-robed man spoke again with a flat voice. "And no, I've heard it. The stately painting is with me. I'll immediately take it out." The young palace master dared not hesitate and immediately retrieved the old and brown painting from his interspatial ring. The stately painting which he bought from the auction at the price of 1,300,000,000 primordial stones. He initially bought the painting out of curiosity and thought of bringing it home with him to try claiming ownership of it. It was only at that moment he realized the stately painting already had an owner. Its master was someone incredibly powerful. He's probably a top-tier super expert in the infinite territory, or maybe even in the legendary third heaven. He's too terrifying. I felt my soul about to completely shatter just moments ago. I've lived for a few 100,000 years, and that's the first time I'm so horrified. All the experts started a discussion. In the middle of the battlefield, the experts from Nanwu Palace, Divine Demon Sect, Life and Death Tower, and Dongfang Clan looked miserable. However, soon their expressions eased and had gradually recovered. The master is a powerful expert that came only for his treasure. He left after retrieving his treasure, and was not interested in the Huangji Golden Pill at all. The Huangji Golden Pill is still with Nanwu Palace, said the elder from Life and Death Tower coldly, whose voice echoed on the battlefield. The two grand ultimate gods from Divine Demon Sect and Dongfang Clan peeked over. The experts from those three powerful sects exchanged looks before. Kill! The war broke out again. Although the appearance of the mysterious black-robed expert gave them a shock, he left after retrieving the stately painting. The Huangji Golden Pill was not taken away, so the battle over the pill was unaffected. The three top sects joined forces, and once again fought madly against the people from Nanwu Palace. The battlefield became fiery hot again. Let's go! Senior Meng turned around and headed toward the star-picking pavilion. Senior Meng, this battle? The purple-robed supervisor was surprised. I'm here only to see the stately painting's owner. There's no need for me to be around since I've seen him. You may stay and watch the battle for the Huangji Golden Pill if you like. Senior Meng smiled and left. There was a dense forest quite far away in a void from the battlefield. The man who wore a black ferocious-looking mask on his face, and assumed by many to be a super expert superior to an undying saint, appeared in the void, and went straight into the dense forest. The mysterious black-robed expert stayed low for a long time deep in the dense forest. After he made sure there was no one following him, he took off the mask and revealed an extremely young face. He was none other than Jian Wushuang. I've taken a huge risk and won the bet. I was right. Jian Wushuang clasped his hands tightly. He was trembling slightly from excitement as his eyes gleamed with a look of surprise. The old and yellowish picture scroll appeared in his hands with just a thought. Stately painting, old mate, I've finally found you. Jian Wushuang smiled. Although he was smiling happily, his back was soaking wet with sweat. Chapter 26:16. Third Heaven. Before the many experts, he looked majestic and intimidating at the scene, with Heaven Ultimate Gods and Grand Ultimate Gods surrendered under his feet. But he was also on the cusp of what could be a storm, as all he had was the supreme life rating pressure. His true strength was far inferior to anyone on that battlefield. Any random Heaven Ultimate Gods were enough to crush him. Therefore, he had to maintain an imposing posture without allowing any room for mistakes. Otherwise, he would not be able to leave the battlefield safely, let alone retrieved his stately painting once his strength level was exposed. He had simply done a very good job at disguising himself to the extent that those experts on the battlefield had completely believed him to be an invincible super expert. The extremely powerful life rating pressure he exerted was of course the crux behind his disguise. Even Crimson Stone Saint knelt when he unleashed his life rating pressure in the saint's tomb. Hence it was tried and tested that even an undying saint could not withstand the pressure he exerted. That made the experts on the battlefield believe Jian Wushuang must be an extremely powerful super expert to be able to display such terrifying pressure. In addition, he was a perfect chaotic creature who had exceptional abilities in manipulating his divine power breath. No one would be able to discover his real cultivation realm as long as he did not take actions to reveal his divine power level, including Heaven Ultimate Gods, Grand Ultimate Gods, and the Undying Saints in seclusion. None of them could see Jian Wushuang's real cultivation realm. The unknown and ambiguity built a daunting experience for those experts on the battlefield. Those 2 points convinced the experts on the battlefield that Jian Wushuang was indeed a super expert. In addition, Jian Wushuang did very well in his disguise, as he had not hesitated to leave the battlefield upon receiving the stately painting. The Nanwu Palace's young palace master would have no qualms handing over the Huangji Golden Pill, and Jian Wushuang could have gotten the Huangji Golden Pill had he asked pushingly. If he had done so, it might have raised doubts about his true identity. The Huangji golden pill was only useful for the ultimate gods after all. He was trying to portray himself as a super expert who was superior to undying saints. So why would he even care for a Huangji golden pill at his level? Even if he were to get one for his disciples, he did not need to snatch the pill from those groups of experts. Countless forces and sects might be vying to give him the Huangji golden pill upon his request. Matters might have taken a different route had those experts been dubious of Jian Wushuang's identity. Therefore, Jian Wushuang was very clear with what he wanted, and was not greedy for the Huangji golden pill. He merely turned around and left after getting the stately painting, which only made the entire process of retrieving his stately painting and evacuation went smoothly. Although I've successfully obtained the stately painting, I've also displayed my strongest trump card, the life-rating pressure of a perfect chaotic creature. The pressure would have probably alerted the will of Heavenly Wei. Jian Wushuang calmed down before raising his head and looked at the void above. Taoist Xian Shun once told him that he must not display his life-rating pressure unless it was necessary. The will of Heavenly Wei would be alerted of his existence once he displayed that skill. Although it was not a life or death situation, the stately painting was very important to him, and he would not want to miss it. He decided to take the risk and perform the technique after carefully considering the pros and cons. This place is far away from the third heaven, which made the will of Heavenly Wei relatively weak. As this is the first time I'm using it, it will be relatively difficult to locate where I am even if I've alerted the will of Heavenly Wei. I'll just need to be cautious and abstain from displaying this technique for the second time, murmured Jian Wushuang. Taoist Xian Shun had also mentioned before that if he used the technique outside of third heaven once or twice, it would be relatively hard for the will of Heavenly Wei to detect his location. At the time, there were no changes from heaven above and earth below when he exerted his life-rating pressure. He probably managed to avoid being detected, since there was no pressure convergence from the will of Heavenly Wei. However, if that happens again, I must immediately leave the Danyang Holy Domain and go as far away as I can, even if the will of Heavenly Wei doesn't come after me, said Jian Wushuang solemnly. He had too much on his shoulder and could not afford to lose, so he had to be cautious not to make even a slight mistake. Otherwise, it might cause a detrimental effect on himself, the Seven Stars Black Sect, and the eternal chaotic world. Let's leave here first and find a place to regain control over the stately painting, muttered Jian Wushuang, who soon left the forest. The third heaven where countless experts yearned to be was located somewhere in an extremely remote territory, somewhere within the third heaven's core. On a dojo's high platform, the white-robed bald man who was preaching to billions of divine demons immediately and suddenly felt something after Jian Wushuang exerted his life-rating pressure. It's indeed outside of the third heaven. The white-robed bald man spoke faintly, but his voice was inaudible to the billions of divine demons who were listening to his lecture. His voice instead reached the ears of several other realm lords under the guidance of his subconscious mind. In a bloodied space, the cold and beautiful woman softly replied, "This is troublesome. The infinite territory is outside the third heaven, where the will of Heavenly Wei is weak, and our influences are hard to reach. Even if we know he's right there in the infinite territory, we won't be able to find him." In the eternal burning flame, the purple-armored devil awakened as a cold voice came from him. "There's nothing we can do now. We can only continue waiting for the day he steps out of the infinite territory and arrives in the third heaven. Another option will be when he uses his special techniques in the infinite territory again, and is detected by the will of Heavenly Wei. As long as the will of Heavenly Wei can roughly pinpoint his location, even if it's only a vague direction or guidance, I'm sure we can hunt him down." The blood-clothed woman laughed casually in an exquisite mansion. "Oh, we can only wait then, but I'm sure he's not stupid. If he knows he's targeted by the will of Heavenly Wei, he won't use this unique technique in the future again. I'm afraid it's not realistic for him to do so again, but we can wait for him to set foot in the third heaven one day, as it'll be much easier to find him then. Well, let's adjourn for now." The purple-armored devil spoke again before his voice faded away. The four very powerful realm lords were communicating with each other over a long distance, and all of them went back to what they were doing after a short exchange. Chapter 26:17. Thousand Treasures Grand World. There was a cave that was temporarily hewn up in a barren and desolate mountain range. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the cave, while the stately painting quietly suspended in mid-air before him. The stately painting was his treasure, and had a long-standing relationship with him. Thus it was easy for him to regain control of the stately painting when refining it again. A large amount of information was channeled into his mind after that. So that's it. Jian Wushuang looked a little surprised. I was too weak in my past life. Although I possessed the stately painting, I couldn't bring out its full potential. What I could do is only some insignificant techniques, even if it's a secret technique within the stately painting. In the previous life, Jian Wushuang had only performed the 9 provinces seal. That technique was extremely tyrannical. However, Jian Wushuang quickly realized the 9 provinces seal was not the only secret technique available in the stately painting. 4 secret techniques came along with the stately painting. Among the 4 secret techniques, the 9 provinces seal was the easiest technique to comprehend and perform. Besides that, Jian Wushuang probably had not completely mastered the 9 provinces seal in his previous life, as he no longer felt the 9 provinces seal being as difficult as he had thought in his past life. In his past life, he only knew the 9 provinces seal represented the 9 provinces in heaven and earth consisting of 9 styles, with one being more powerful than the other. However, the 9 provinces seal's essence laid in the styles being superimposed and fused. The first 3 styles were fused to achieve the Divine Emperor seal. The next 3 styles were to make the True Emperor seal. The last 3 styles, on the other hand, would achieve the most powerful Supreme seal. The Divine Emperor seal, True Emperor seal, and Supreme seal were the 3 most terrifying hidden styles of the 9 provinces seal. It was a pity that he could not even fully display the last 3 styles of the 9 provinces seal in his previous life, let alone fusing and superimposing them. He had never come in contact with the Divine Emperor seal, True Emperor seal, or Supreme seal. He was finally qualified to come in contact with them in his current life. Jian Wushuang secretly said, I can easily execute all 9 styles in the 9 provinces seal with my current strength. It shouldn't be difficult for me to display the Divine Emperor seal, True Emperor seal, and Supreme seal, but it'll take me some time to study them. In addition to the 9 province seal, there was another secret technique he could display among the 4 secret techniques. The 1,000 Treasures Grand World Secret Technique. The 1,000 Treasures Grand World Transformation. That was a technique that forcibly transformed the world into one more suitable for battle. There were many different worlds in the 1,000 Treasures Grand World. The Life and Death World, Yin and Yang World, and Water and Fire World. In addition, there were also conducive battle worlds for Jian Wushuang, Space-Time World, Transmigration World, and Sword Principle World. Even though mastering that technique might not improve his overall strength by much, it was enough to make a change in his battle strategies. The 9 provinces seal and 1,000 Treasures Grand World are just 2 secret techniques in stately painting which I can study and perform now. The remaining 2 secret techniques in the stately painting aren't something I'm capable of doing now, murmured Jian Wushuang. He knew the stately painting was so precious and extremely difficult to obtain one in the entire ancient god domain. Hence the secret techniques which came with it were not something easily executed. It would be extremely helpful to him nonetheless, if he was able to master the 9 provinces seal and 1,000 Treasures Grand World. Let's begin studying then. Jian Wushuang anticipatingly began studying the 3 superimposed seals of the 9 provinces seal, as well as the 1,000 Treasures Grand World. 3 years passed by in a flash. Jian Wushuang's eyes slowly opened up inside that cave. The 3 fusion seals within the 9 provinces seal are much more difficult than I thought. I've been studying for 3 years, yet I've just barely fused the first 3 styles of the 9 provinces seal. I can fundamentally display the Divine Emperor seal, but not to its full potential. I'm afraid it'll take me a long time to study the remaining true Emperor Seal and the Supreme Seal. The Thousand Treasures Grand World is much easier for me to comprehend on the contrary, and I've already got most of it under my control. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly before immediately standing up. Let's go outside and try it. Jian Wushuang then walked out of the cave and came to the vast void. He took a deep breath and waved his hand as a ray of light instantly melted into the surrounding void, followed by the world being transformed. A wonderful scroll-painting world appeared out of thin air above the infinite sky. Jian Wushuang saw the scroll-painting world and grinned. Under his subconscious control soon. Thousand Treasures Grand World, Transmigration World. Rumbling, his surroundings instantly began to transform. It was originally a barren mountain range, but had become complete darkness in the blink of an eye. Huge reincarnation passages appeared out of thin air one after another inside this darkness. The reincarnation passages were scattered in every corner of the world, as the endless transmigration strength spread. That was a transmigration world filled with endless transmigration strength, with Jian Wushuang standing at the core of the transmigration world as the world's master. So, this the Thousand Treasures Grand World. Jian Wushuang was pleased upon seeing the changes in the surrounding world into the transmigration world before him. The transmigration world conjured from the Thousand Treasures Grand World was completely different from a principal world. The principal world was discharged from one's own body to oppress and frighten the opponent. On the other hand, the transmigration world conjured from the Thousand Treasures Grand World was to transform the world and its surrounding environment into a state most conducive for the user to fight. The transmigration world would be perfect for Jian Wushuang to manipulate the transmigration law to its fullest, and even exert a combat power far exceeding his own, since he had comprehended transmigration law. Such was the so-called environmental advantage. Various geographical factor advantages could determine the victor between two almost equal in combat strength opponents. Thousand Treasures Grand World was able to place its user at an absolute geographical advantage. Chapter 26:18. Heaven's Edge. Jian Wushuang returned to the cave he was at earlier after getting acquainted with the Thousand Treasures Grand World. He sat down cross-legged with the stately painting no longer in front of him. He had the transmigration sword formation and strange golden stone he got from the auction for a great price instead. Jian Wushuang first looked at the golden stone. What exactly is in this golden stone? Jian Wushuang held the golden stone while his soul power penetrated it to have a good look at its insides. He continued investigating for nearly half an hour, before finally withdrawing his soul power. I sense space-time quivering in this golden stone. It's indeed extraordinary, and probably has something within. But is my strength still too weak at the moment? Or is my space-time law understanding too shallow? Why can't I see anything? Jian Wushuang murmured. He shook his head before deciding not to spend more time on the golden stone, and turned his gaze to the transmigration sword formation. The extremely powerful transmigration sword formation was created by the Sword Lord Tong Xian, who was invincible among undying saints many years ago. He managed to get his hand on the transmigration sword formation's first 4 volumes, after spending 40 million primordial stones on them. Hence he expected to gain something useful from it. Let's take a look first. Jian Wushuang unleashed his soul power into the jade slip. His mind received a vast amount of messages in an instant as a picture concurrently appeared in his mind. There were 4 scenes in total, with each being a scene of an expert casting a type of sword formation. Jian Wushuang could see the power of those sword formations very clearly, and was surprised. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes again after a while. So this is Sword Lord Tong Xin's creation. This is what made him invincible those days in the ancient god domain. The transmigration sword formation is truly powerful, with its first 4 volumes, alone already extremely powerful. However, a more powerful technique also brings an equally elevated difficulty in its execution, as it demands a high understanding of the transmigration law and sword principles, said Jian Wushuang. The first 4 volumes of the transmigration sword formation. The first sword formation, Heaven's Edge. The second sword formation, All Sank. The third sword formation, Transmigration drunk. The fourth sword formation, frozen world. The first sword formation, Heaven's Edge, required merit achievement in the sword world, and the first stage understanding of the transmigration law. Jian Wushuang's current understanding of the sword principle and transmigration was just sufficient to execute that sword formation. In other words, he could only at best attempt to perform the first sword formation. The sword formation was proven to be powerful at that. Jian Wushuang began to carefully study this first sword formation without hesitation. The transmigration sword formation was extremely profound, requiring a very high level of understanding and talent to apprehend it. The first sword formation itself was difficult for many cultivators who were good at sword principles and transmigration law. Many spent hundreds or even thousands of years, but could barely apprehend it. Even Jian Wushuang had to spend 2 years in full effort and focus on doing it right to apprehend the very first sword formation. Jian Wushuang stood alone on the barren ground 2 years later. His mind power at work as a stream of light immediately appeared in front of him. The light stream was a long sword with 9 handles, with each handle filled with transmigration strength. Go! Jian Wushuang pointed a finger at the 9 long swords floating in front of him as they evolved into 9 huge reincarnation passages. Those 9 reincarnation passages were like large and mysterious black holes. Those 9 black holes charged at the void up front under Jian Wushuang's guidance, with extremely great powers, such that the void shuddered wherever they passed. 9 swords become 1 Heaven's Edge. Jian Wushuang commanded. Any one of those black holes could easily annihilate an Earth Ultimate God. At Jian Wushuang's command, they overlapped in an instant and formed a huge and endless reincarnation passage, in which a black sword with transmigration strength shot out suddenly and violently from the passage end. The black sword instantly went through the mountain ranges in front like Heaven's Edge. The black sword disintegrated and turned into the 9 black holes once again, after passing through several mountains, before returning to Jian Wushuang's side. Jian Wushuang was shocked when he saw the penetrated mountains before him. Jian Wushuang exclaimed, "This is indeed powerful, as I didn't even use much strength. I should be able to easily handle any Earth Ultimate Gods, including peak Earth Ultimate Gods. Besides, I've only used 9 ordinary swords in the sword formation with some low-level earthly treasures. They aren't even powerful divine weapons, and nowhere fit to perform transmigration law techniques. The power of this sword formation will skyrocket if I can get 9 identical swords that can make full use of transmigration law." Jian Wushuang held his hands together. He did not have divine weapons suitable for transmigration techniques, but believed the star-picking pavilion should have them. Jian Wushuang immediately left and headed directly to the star-picking pavilion. Although he had fled after retrieving the stately painting, he remained in the Narcissus territory and was not too far from star-picking pavilion. He would at most need to travel several days before arriving at the star-picking pavilion. Jian Wushuang arrived at the star-picking pavilion again a few days later, in a separate room within star-picking pavilion. "Oh, so Namwu Palace took the Huangji Golden Pill?" Jian Wushuang sat on a stool while sipping tea and smiling faintly at the star-picking pavilion's black chief. He appeared halfway through the battle for the Huangji Golden Pill and caused a scene, but the battle continued as soon as he left, and he expected the result to be finalized on that day. Although Namwu Palace ended up having the Huangji Golden Pill, they paid a large price for it. Half of their Heaven Ultimate Gods, about 6, were sacrificed, and one of their 2 Grand Ultimate Gods seriously injured, said the Black Chief. "Did you say 6 Heaven Ultimate God were sacrificed?" Jian Wushuang secretly smacked his tongue before asking, "What about the young palace master? What happened to him?" The Black Chief continued, "He's all right. Although his strength isn't that great with his just average abilities, he's after all the Namwu Palace's young palace master, the son of Namwu Palace Master. The other top 3 powers dare not kill him." Chapter 26:19. Infernal Crimson. Jian Wushuang nodded in agreement after hearing that. Although the top factions in Danyang Holy Realm occasionally competed against each other, things had not truly turned ugly between them. Although Namwu Palace had sacrificed a few Heaven Ultimate Gods in return for the Huangji Golden Pill, They were willing to accept such a fate. However, matters might be different if Nanwu Palace lost one of their grand ultimate gods, or the young palace master, as that might lead to tensions between the top factions. Crimson Stone Fort would be the one reaping benefits if that happened. I'm here to buy a sword-type divine weapon that must be suitable for transmigration law, said Jian Wushuang. Master, you want it for the transmigration sword formation, right? The Black Chief peered at Jian Wushuang. You're right. It's for the transmigration sword formation, admitted Jian Wushuang. No one else knew Jian Wushuang had bagged the transmigration sword formation besides the Black Chief, as he was the one who served Jian Wushuang. He would never release the news to the public due to Star Picking Pavilion's strict customers' privacy policy. Any Star Picking Pavilion's chiefs arbitrarily disclosed their customers' information to the public, or pulled any tricks, when trading with customers, would be executed once convicted with no room for struggles or sophistry. The Black Chief said, "There are several types of swords in the Star Picking Pavilion that are suitable for the transmigration sword formation with varying strength. The most powerful one among them is the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. Are you interested?" "Let me have a look," said Jian Wushuang. The Black Chief soon unsheathed a black longsword and showed it to Jian Wushuang. The black longsword was less than 3 feet long with an extremely thin and sharp blade. The blade was smooth and plain without any mysterious patterns or carvings. However, there was a blood-stained line running through the entire sword from the blade's center, which made the sword seem extremely cold and eerie. The black longsword was enshrouded in a thick transmigration strength. The Infernal Crimson Divine Sword was murderous. Good sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up as he could resonate with the transmigration strength carried by the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword while stroking it. He was certain that his power would be boosted if he used the sword to perform the transmigration sword technique. This sword is good, but it's only a top-tier earthly treasure. Is there something at a higher level? Jian Wushuang asked. The divine weapons usually came in different grade sets. The Black Chief explained. We do have a heavenly treasure level Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. However, you must be able to control all 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords at once if you're using it for the transmigration sword formation. It takes a lot of divine power to control even one heavenly treasure level divine weapon. Won't it be too taxing on you if you try to control all 9 of them at once? He placed himself in Jian Wushuang's shoes when recommending top-tier earthly treasure level Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. I have my methods regarding the divine power controls. Show me the heavenly treasure level Infernal Crimson Divine Sword, said Jian Wushuang. The Black Chief did not say much as an Infernal Crimson Divine Sword that was the same as before appeared in front of Jian Wushuang the moment he waved his hand. Although there were no changes in appearances and transmigration strength permeated on the blade's surface, the heavenly treasure sword possessed a much stronger aura than its top-tier earthly treasure counterpart, giving off a much colder and fiercer aura. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up at the sight of the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. How many primordial stones does this Infernal Crimson Divine Sword cost? Jian Wushuang asked. Master, this Infernal Crimson Divine Sword is a graded divine weapon. However, you may be able to use other special treasures like the Soul Offensive Divine Weapon, which you have previously auctioned in exchange for divine elixir pills. Chapter 2620. Golden Chief Yuan Lei. Heavenly Treasure Soul Offensive Divine Weapon? I was very lucky to get it, so how could I possibly get a second one? Jian Wushuang smiled. Well, let me find a way myself if that's the case. Jian Wushuang stood up and walked out of Star Picking Pavilion. Goodbye, master. The Black Chief sent Jian Wushuang away. The Black Chief immediately went to a bald man after Jian Wushuang left the Star Picking Pavilion. The bald man was the one who had some entanglements with San Shouwang, one of the 3 golden chiefs in Star Picking Pavilion. Master, the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord has left, reported the Black Chief in a servile tone. The bald man asked, what did he do? He bought 9 heavenly treasure Infernal Crimson Divine Swords for 22,500,000 primordial stones to perform the transmigration sword formation. In addition, he also wanted to exchange his primordial stones for divine elixir pills, but I refused, said the Black Chief. Why would an Earth Ultimate God need 9 heavenly treasure infernal crimson divine swords to perform the transmigration sword formation? That's a bit too luxurious, isn't it? Well, he was lucky enough to get a heavenly treasure soul offensive divine weapon, and sold it for 100 million primordial stones at the auction after all. He had also sold a heavenly treasure defensive armor at the same time, and probably has a total of 120 million primordial stones. He still has a lot more to squander after deducting the 40 million he spent on the transmigration sword formation. The bald man stood up after pondering momentarily and said, "I'll go out for a bit. Just find an excuse to dismiss them if other supervisors or the 2 other golden chiefs ask for me." The Black Chief was hesitant before he continued. "Master, the star-picking pavilion has a strict policy against targeting our customers, no?" The bald man shouted. "What do you think I have in mind? There's unresolved enmity between both of us. Don't I even have the right to resolve private grievances?" The Black Chief frowned, but dared not continue. The bald man soon left Star-Picking Pavilion and went toward Jian Wushuang's direction. In the vast void, Jian Wushuang was seen in his golden robe and longsword on his back sauntering around. He was muttering under his breath, "Primordial stones are no longer useful to me now. I'll need to get my hands on some divine elixir pills if I'm planning to continue relying on refining divine power for my cultivation realm improvement. It's a pity the star-picking pavilion won't exchange it for primordial stones." Jian Wushuang was quite helpless. Although he had bought a lot of treasures, he was still left with quite a lot of primordial stones on hand. However, those primordial stones were of not much help to him at that moment. The Black Chief mentioned to him that he could use other special treasures to exchange for divine elixir pills with the star-picking pavilion. But he did not have any suitable treasures on him at the moment for such purpose. There were many treasures in his possession, with many of them being rather valuable. The stately painting went without saying. Blood Mountain sword and golden glass armor were his life divine weapon and life armor. They were extremely powerful and invaluable. The Fengtian scroll from Crimson Stone Saint was of great help to Jian Wushuang's enlightenment and cultivation. Any one of those treasures could be used in exchange for a large number of divine elixir pills, but he would never do that. Therefore, he had to come up with an alternative solution to get some divine elixir pills. Just as Jian Wushuang thought about it. Jian Wushuang was taken aback. His soul power had been sweeping around, and that was how he discovered someone within his soul detection range. That person was emanating a particularly tyrannical aura. "Are you here for me?" Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly, and the opponent sped up as expected. A stream of light appeared in front of him in just seconds. The bald man, who also wore a golden robe, slowly emerged as the stream of light dissipated. Golden robe. Jian Wushuang looked at the bald man's golden robe with his constricted eyes. This is the golden robe worn by a star-picking pavilion golden chief. He's a golden chief from the star-picking pavilion. Is he coming after me for that incident? Jian Wushuang had sort of understood the other party's intention at that moment. "You're the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord, Jian Wushuang, am I right?" The bald man stared at Jian Wushuang with a weird smile on his face. "My name is Yuan Lei, have you heard of me?" Jian Wushuang instinctively shook his head. Although Jian Wushuang knew Yuan Lei's identity and was quite sure of his intentions, he had never heard of the name Yuan Lei. "Thanks, it seems that San Shouwang had not mentioned my name to you, but you should know me nonetheless," said the bald man Yuan Lei. "That's for sure." Jian Wushuang verified his conjecture when Yuan Lei mentioned San Shouwang. San Shouwang once revealed that he had an older brother, a star-picking pavilion golden chief, who always kept an eye on him. That person must be Yuan Lei. "Are you San Shouwang's older brother?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Older brother? Well, I guess so." Yuan Lei nodded. "Although I don't want to admit it, we did swear to be brothers when San Shouwang and I were only divine demons a long time ago. Unfortunately, he's not very talented. I've already achieved so much and became the star-picking pavilion golden chief, while he remained as an insignificant territorial lord after so many years. Although he isn't qualified to be my brother, we were brothers nonetheless. What do you think I should do since he died in your hands? Yuan Lei stared at Jian Wushuang with a strange smile. Jian Wushuang looked gloomy and said in a low voice, "The battle for the territorial lord position was a matter of life and death. He's weak, and that's why I'm able to kill him. Yuan Lei, you should know better being the Star-Picking Pavilion's golden chief. Besides, I'm a customer of the Star-Picking Pavilion, and have just left the Star-Picking Pavilion. I'm afraid it's inappropriate for you to do so, isn't it? I'm sure you would be in hot soup if your supervisor finds out, right?" Yuan Lei sneered. "Hee, I'm here for our private grievance. What will the supervisor do even if he finds out? Jianyi, let's not talk nonsense. I'm not here to avenge Sanshou Wang. But he borrowed a large number of primordial stones from me to purchase the 4th volume of the Divine Destruction Beast Manual before he died. I can only ask you to pay me back on his behalf now that he's dead." The divine power pressed on Jian Wushuang, without giving him any chance to escape. "This is really powerful. You're indeed a heaven ultimate god." Jian Wushuang stood in the void, and looked up to admire the green beast coming down at him. 5 years ago, he had seen the scary battle between heaven ultimate gods and grand ultimate gods during the fight of the Huangji Golden Pill. At that time, he was far away from the battlefield, and had not personally participated in the battlefield. Hence he did not manage to grasp a feel of heaven ultimate god's power. Even though he did break into the battlefield later, all he did was threaten the people on the battlefield with his life-rating pressure, without any chance to fight against the heaven ultimate gods. At this time, he was all alone, and could finally feel the strength of a heaven ultimate god. The green beast was just a simple trick performed by Yuan Lei at will, but its power was sufficiently strong to put any ordinary Earth ultimate god in despair. An ordinary Earth ultimate god, even some of the weaker peak ultimate gods, might not even have a survival chance under that green beast's mouth. However, Jian Wushuang was not included among those Earth ultimate gods. He kept a cold and desolate look on his face, as the 7 stars secret technique within his body began brewing, whereas the aura on his body had also instantly climbed from a high-level Earth ultimate god to the peak Earth ultimate god level. The Blood Mountain sword behind him was instantly unsheathed, and moved along with his steps. A monstrous killing intent that had been infinitely magnified rose all of a sudden. Kill! 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 Jian Wushuang's entire mind and body were replaced by the murderous intent. His eyes slowly closed before reopened again. A terrifying killing intent shot out the moment his eyes opened. Space-time sword technique 5th style killing heart. A scarlet sword light with murderous intent came down. The scarlet sword light carried a terrifying power, which instantly cut the mountain-like green beast, that was hundreds of feet tall, into half. Yet the sword light remained unabated, and continued cutting through the void above right into the sky. Infinite divine power breath was disseminated. Oh! Yuan Lei gave Jian Wushuang a surprised look. No wonder he's so arrogant. He's quite powerful. Jian Wushuang snorted coldly, as he shot out a few streams of light using his mind. Those light streams were coming from black swords that exuded a cold breath, with a large amount of transmigration strength. Those were the Infernal Crimson Divine Sword. 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords. 9 Heavenly Treasure Divine Weapons, arranged in a line before Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang then pointed with a finger. Buzz! 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 The 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords began to evolve into 9 reincarnation passages, in the blink of an eye. Chapter 26-22. The Battle Go. The 9 reincarnation passages went crashing at Yuan Lei like 9 gigantic asteroids under the guidance of Jian Wushuang. Each of those 9 asteroids contained immense and powerful energy. Yuan Lei shivered, and a surging pure divine power that could only be possessed by a heaven ultimate god concentrating in the void before him broke out within the blink of an eye. A barefooted green titan that was more than 3 kilometers tall, formed with thick muscular arms and thighs, and a single horn on its forehead. Its body surface was shrouded with terrifying divine power. The Green Titan swung its muscular arm as soon it appeared, and threw out a slap. Boom! The 9 asteroids were immediately deflected away. Jian Wushuang focused his eyes. 9 swords combine Heaven's Edge. Ring! The 9 asteroids were immediately deflected backward and overlapped each other, before suddenly forming a huge reincarnation passage. A black divine sword shrouded with infinite samsara strength instantly shot out violently from the end of the reincarnation passage after that. The black divine sword was a perfect sword formation, formed through the combination of 9 infernal crimson divine swords. The first stage of transmigration sword formation, Heaven's Edge. The first stage sword formation's power completely broke out following the full activation of Jian Wushuang's transmigration law. Virum. The black divine sword pierced through the void with terrifying power, and charging boldly at the Green Titan like an awl. The Green Titan growled before tightly clenched its fist and punched violently with infinite force. Impact noises burst out violently as the two made contact, and a huge hole appeared on the Green Titan's fist. The black divine sword continued its crazed attack, and pierced through its palm before going through its chest. The momentum was finally exhausted and dispersed with the reappear of 9 identical black divine swords flying sideways in the void. The Green Titan should have fallen apart at that moment when being penetrated. However, it was still shrouded with surging energy. Yuan Lei was still standing there behind it with a slight smile. That's truly a sword formation created by Sword Lord Tong Xian. Such incredible power. You truly are gifted to be able to unleash the sword formation to such a level despite only learning it for a few years. Unfortunately, the distance between Earth Ultimate God and Heaven Ultimate God isn't something that could be filled in with a sword formation. The penetrated hole on the Green Titan not only recovered, but its energy suddenly surged even higher before vigorously projecting outwards after he said that. A green-colored lance then appeared in its right hand. Vitality Law. Jian Wushuang squinted while staring at the Green Titan. He could tell that Yuan Lei had studied Vitality Law, as it possesses the characteristics of strong vitality, incredible resilience, and extremely firm defensive abilities. However, experts who studied Vitality Law did not possess very powerful offensive abilities. Although being offensive was not Yuan Lei's forte, he was a true Heaven Ultimate God after all. Jian Wushuang did not dare to be careless. An immense gold-colored divine power was forcefully gathered accompanied with ringing noises at that instance, and formed a more than 9 kilometers tall golden god shadow behind him. The divine golden god shadow stood tall, while overlooking everything around it. The Green Titan was only 3 kilometers tall, which was a dwarf compared to the golden god shadow in terms of size. Furthermore, Jian Wushuang's overall ability surged even higher with the help of the divine god of punishment. You do have some tricks. Shame that they're useless. Yuan Lei smiled faintly while suddenly lashing out his hand. A wholesome principal world suppressed Jian Wushuang in an instant. The principal world was filled with powerful energy with the area that had opened up having probably surpassed 5,000 kilometers. Most importantly, the principal world had reached profound realm, since he was a Heaven Ultimate God. A wave of vital energy was sweeping out at its surroundings as his principal world pressed outward. Life started bursting out in the wasteland below, within a split second, as large amounts of trees, flora and fauna burst out from the ground. A refreshing breeze blew by as the environment between heaven and earth turned into a completely lively new realm. The Green Titan's size immensely augmented as its power grew to a whole new level, and it began to charge at Jian Wushuang with the lance in its hand. However, Jian Wushuang sneered at the scene before him. Right then, boom! A heaven-shaking sword essence suddenly surged as the 50,000 kilometers sword world he developed was unleashed. Although it was only a merit sword world, it ruthlessly swept out as soon as it appeared, and the profound realm principal world retreated swiftly like an ebbing tide under the sword world's influence. What? Yuan Lei was shocked. A merit sword world could actually suppress my profound principal world. How's that possible? Yuan Lei was completely stunned, but did not know that the Heaven Ultimate God, Zhonghun, that Jian Wushuang had killed was equally as stunned as he was. Furthermore, that surprise was only the beginning, as Jian Wushuang waved his arm right after that, and a beam of light blended into the surrounding void. Heaven and earth were shivering in that instance. A most beautiful scroll painting world appeared out of nowhere from the heaven above. The scroll painting world was incredibly real, with mountains, rivers, and even contained 9 gigantic continents. "What's that?" Yuan Lei frowned. "The Thousand Treasures Grand World, Transmigration World." Jian Wushuang's cold voice resonated. Vroom, the surroundings began to change. The original wasteland initially became full of life, with birds chirping and flowers blooming from Yuan Lei's unleashed vitality law power. However, that environment had turned into infinite darkness in the blink of an eye. Gigantic reincarnation passages began to appear one by one out of nowhere in the darkness. The reincarnation passages were spread out to different corners of the world, as infinite samsara strength began to unscrupulously spread out. The transmigration world was filled with infinite samsara strength, as Jian Wushuang stood in the center, although he was the ruler of the transmigration world. "Yuan Lei, welcome to my world." Jian Wushuang smiled as his laughter resonated in every corner of the transmigration world. Ring, 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 ring. The 9 separated infernal crimson divine sword appeared before Jian Wushuang once again, trembling and shrouded with samsara strength, way stronger than before. Chapter 26-23. World Transformation. Transmigration world was mainly powered by transmigration law, which was filled with inexhaustible transmigration powers within. Samsara strength activation, or usage of transmigration-related secret techniques, in that world, would have their strength greatly empowered. However, tactics from other laws would be weakened considerably in that world. The effect of Jian Wushuang's transmigration sword formation could be maximized there. On the other hand, Yuan Lei had his vitality law limited in every way. "Yuan Lei, welcome to my world." Jian Wushuang's laughter pounded on Yuan Lei's eardrums, as he felt a touch of annoyance. World transformation? This kid could actually do that in an instant. How mind-blowing is that formation? Yuan Lei was feeling a little shocked, but quickly firmed up his stare. No, he's a mere Earth ultimate god regardless of how skilled this kid is. Grand techniques such as world transformation are perhaps unachievable even by undying saints, let alone him. He must be relying on some treasure. Yes, it has to be a treasure that enables world transformation. The treasure would be mine if I killed him. Killing intent rose in Yuan Lei's mind. He originally did not have such strong killing intent toward Jian Wushuang, as he only wanted Jian Wushuang to pay him 50 million primordial stones, and he would immediately leave. However, forget about 50 million at that moment. He would definitely not allow Jian Wushuang to walk away alive, even if he agreed to pay him 100 million primordial stones. Boom! The 3 kilometers tall green titan's hostility shot up into the heavens. It already appeared before Jian Wushuang, and attacked furiously with the lance in its hands. Humph! Jian Wushuang let out a cold humph, as the 9 infernal crimson divine swords floating before him once again overlapped each other, and again formed the first stage of transmigration sword formation, Heaven's Edge. The sword formation's energy level increased drastically, and shot out with a boom under the empowerment from the surrounding infinite samsara strength. Bang! 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 One violent bang after another resonated as the transmigration sword formation repeatedly clashed head-on with the green titan's lance. Although the black divine sword was fended off every time, and even flying off, the green titan did not have it easy either, with its advancement completely blocked. Moreover, the black divine sword was incredibly agile. It could completely turn into an overpowering sword formation, but it could also disassemble into 9 different swords, while still being able to unleash incomparable energy. For instance, the sword formation found a chance to disassemble at that moment. 6 infernal crimson divine swords continued clashing with the green titan, while the other 3 were attacking Yuan Lei like lightning under the empowerment of the surrounding samsara strength. The grim-looking Yuan Lei spontaneously executed a palm strike, which deflected those 3 infernal crimson divine swords, and caused them to fly backward. In a not-so-distant void, Jian Wushuang's eyes were burning with a heaven-shaking battle intent in the center of the transmigration world at that moment. Heaven Ultimate God. I'd love to see if I have the abilities to slay a Heaven Ultimate God. Jian Wushuang moved with a bloodthirsty smile. The heaven and earth around transformed once again as he moved. Although the surrounding was still pitch black, the various reincarnation passages had already vanished out of sight. A large number of space-time cracks and immense space-time storms took over its place. The samsara strength that initially filled the area between heaven and earth had changed into surging space-time energy. The Thousand Treasures Grand World had shifted from Transmigration World into Space-Time World in the blink of an eye. That world was dominated by space-time. Heaven and earth have changed again. Yuan Lei's face was grim as Jian Wushuang concurrently appeared before him under his scrutiny. Ring! A total of 300 apparitions burst out at the same time and filled the space. They were faster and more agile under the effect of space-time energy. Even Yuan Lei could not tell which among the apparitions was Jian Wushuang's true self in such a short time. Whoosh! A cold sword light suddenly appeared and cunningly directed itself at Yuan Lei's heart from behind. That's really fast. Yuan Lei was shocked. In truth, Jian Wushuang could not perform at such incredible speed with his current understanding of space-time law. The speed was mainly due to him situated at the space-time world within the Thousand Treasures Grand World. His performance using space-time law was greatly amplified there. Boom! A low-impact noise resonated which shuddered Yuan Lei, who swiftly and subconsciously moved sideways. However, Jian Wushuang instantly dashed forward and completely unleashed his sword technique with a terrifying speed. Whoosh! 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 Shades of sword shadows lashed out from Jian Wushuang's hand. The sword shadows looked very spontaneous, hence its momentum was not considered strong. However, they were moving too fast. Too fast. They were just too fast. Jian Wushuang already possesses very fast speeds. The space-time world's assistance only immensely further increased his attack speed, which resulted in his sword lights moving incredibly fast despite being a spontaneous attack. The inexhaustible sword shadows were like an infinite ocean of swords that shrouded Yuan Lei within and forced him to defend himself the best he could. Despite being able to defend himself, he began to lose gradually from exhaustion. Kid, don't be too cocky now. Yuan Lei was incredibly mad and finally unleashed his Heaven Ultimate God abilities. Layers and layers of vital strength shrouded his body as his divine body also began to surge violently before growing to 5 meters tall, with a great deal of energy increase. Energy began to gather in his right hand as he unleashed a palm strike. Boom boom! Heaven and earth shivered as a gigantic hand suddenly appeared. That gigantic hand emitted such energy levels that it would make any regular Earth Ultimate God lose all hopes to live. Even Jian Wushuang could not help but squint. It was not long from when he first managed to control the Thousand Treasures Grand World. Hence the space-time world he manifested from within was not too sturdy. The surrounding space-time world began to tremble upon the appearance of the gigantic hand. The gigantic hand's complete energy outburst shattered the space-time world and caused Jian Wushuang to retreat at that instant. Heaven Ultimate Gods are truly marvelous. Chapter 26-24. The Strongest Battle Power. It was the Transmigration World first, then Space-Time World, and now it has shifted into the Sword Principle World. Yuan Lei did not like that a single bit. Beams of vigorous sword essence filled every corner of that world upon the Sword Principle World's formation. Jian Wushuang had been using his 50,000 kilometers perfect sword world to violently suppress and stun Yuan Lei, which caused his principal world to barely hang in there. Jian Wushuang's sword world energy suddenly surged ferociously once again upon the shift into sword principal world, and crushed Yuan Lei's principal world in just a short moment. An incredibly powerful stunning strength took effect on Yuan Lei's body. Damn! Yuan Lei could not help but curse. Jian Wushuang attacked once again at that moment. The Blood Mountain sword lashed out silently. The heaven, earth, and space-time seemed as though they were overlapping. A mysterious sword shadow flashed by, and disappeared under such overlappings. Space-time sword technique's sixth form, overlapping shadow. With the support of the surrounding sword principal world, Jian Wushuang's strike was especially terrifying. Yuan Lei was completely under the sword world's stunning effects as his face turned red from seeing the sword being pointed at him, and the 3 kilometers tall green titan immediately stood before him. Slash! The cold sharp sword blade sliced through the green titan and cut it into 2 halves before the sword shadow's impressive momentum continued to sweep toward Yuan Lei's divine body. Although Yuan Lei's divine body was equipped with protective techniques, his body was still shaken violently under the sword shadow attacks, and threw up a big gulp of blood in the next moment. He was injured. A respectable heaven ultimate god expert like Yuan Lei was severely injured. Boy, you've totally pissed me off. I want to strip off your skin and take your bones apart to vent my hatred today. Yuan Lei's eyes turned red as he released a deep growl filled with infinite killing intent, like a demon from hell. Jian Wushuang sneered upon seeing that. What coincidence. I'm also losing interest in playing games with you. Let's have a duel of fates. Jian Wushuang's body surface burst with golden light as soon as he finished his words. The golden light which came from his golden robe was the golden glass armor. A layer of golden armor appeared on the surface of his body in only a swift moment. One of the top 5 7 stars Black Sect's secret technique, 9 Sparkle Star Armor, was unleashed. His current achievement of the 9 Sparkle Star Armor from the Golden Armor chapter was enough to increase Jian Wushuang's overall ability 3-fold. Freeze! Jian Wushuang quietly commanded, and the 9 Infernal Crimson Divine swords once again overlapped each other in the void next to him, before forming the first stage of Transmigration Sword Formation. At the same time, a wave of golden divine power swept out from Jian Wushuang's body and formed a grand golden divine power ocean that swept across every direction in a frenzy, covering the surrounding heaven and earth. A gigantic golden prison appeared in the sword principal world in the blink of an eye. The golden prison's appearance perfectly overlapped with the sword principal world as its realm suppression effects began to sweep outward. The 9 kilometers tall golden god shadow behind Jian Wushuang also had its aura rise to its peak. Its eyes were shining with a thick essence of light while standing still. 7 stars secret technique, divine god of punishment, and 9 sparkle star armor. I've unleashed all 3 of 7 stars sect's strongest secret techniques. I've also used the stately paintings 1000 Treasures Grand World and Prison of Punishment. Presently, I've shown all my cards except for the life rating suppression. This is the highest state I can reach for the moment, and also my most powerful form. I feel that the current me is even qualified to destroy a regular heaven ultimate god. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists as his burning battle intent surged. Yuan Lei humped coldly as his body that had already grown to 5 meters tall grew dramatically again, and became 10 meters tall. At the same time, various secret markings which looked like tree branches surfaced on his body, and gradually crawled all over his body, making him look ever so ferocious and terrifying. A gigantic tree grew upward behind him. That gigantic tree was also 3 kilometers tall, incomparably sturdy and full of life. A layer of green armor also appeared on the green titan's body in front of Yuan Lei along with its sudden violently surging energy. Charge! Yuan Lei shouted a command, and the green titan charged at Jian Wushuang fiercely with a jump that covered a long distance in a short moment. Go! The black divine sword manifested from Transmigration Sword Formation vibrated upon being pointed by Jian Wushuang. Its energy suddenly increased 3-fold before charging outward in the blink of an eye under the 9 Sparkle Star Armor's influence. Jian Wushuang's deadly eyes stared ahead at Yuan Lei, who was at a far distance. The 9 kilometers tall golden god shadow suddenly burst with glorious golden light behind him. The gigantic golden god shadow's arms swung outwards upon Jian Wushuang's mental manipulation. The 2 golden palms suddenly expanded infinitely to the extent of covering the sky and the sun, such that half of heaven and earth could be covered with only one hand. The entire surrounding void was then covered by both hands. Both palms began to fold together toward Yuan Lei. Punishment, divine destruction. Jian Wushuang commanded vigorously. The terrifying divine power burst out of the golden god Shadow's giant palms. Yuan Lei was completely imprisoned within the void, as the two palms slowly folded together. Divine destruction, like prison of punishment, was one of the techniques built within the divine god of punishment secret technique. In his past life, Jian Wushuang had seen Emperor by using that move before. In his current life, he could finally use it, after making a breakthrough to peak ultimate god along with a few years of studying. Even though they were the same moves, it was a few times more powerful than Emperor Bei's when Jian Wushuang performed it. Yuan Lei began to panic upon seeing both golden palms closing in on him from both sides. He could feel the extremely destructive energy contained in the two palms, and dared not be careless. Boom boom boom. Infinite green divine power suddenly burst out from his body, and caused the gigantic tree behind him to begin spreading out. The countless branches started to take shape and extend before finally clashing head-on with the two golden palms. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The divine power clashing noises resonated the heaven and earth. However, the head-on clash only lasted for a short moment before the two gigantic golden palms began folding together again. What? Yuan Lei was completely shocked, and had not expected that he still could not fend off that particular attack after unleashing his most powerful ability. The two golden palms were still closing in, and continued to suppress him, while the branches which burst out from his body were also gradually losing the fight. Chapter 26-25, Bombardment. Boom! The pair of golden giant palms finally folded together completely. Yuan Lei was naturally bearing unprecedented pressure, situated in that void, in which the horrifying energy was violently crushing. The golden divine power gradually subsided after a while, and the void returned to its original calmness bit by bit. Yuan Lei was still standing in that void after matters died down, but his body was covered with blood. Cracks began to appear on the 3 kilometers tall tree behind him along with his greatly decreased aura. However, an expert who practiced vitality law had the incredible rejuvenating ability. His capability would return in an extremely short time, so long the giant tree behind him still stands. Still kicking. Jian Wushuang's frosty eyes stared at Yuan Lei. Yuan Lei raised his head and looked at him with a strange smile on his lips. Jian Yi, I truly have underestimated you. You're merely an Earth ultimate god who not only possesses great battle strength, but also endless techniques. I've lost this battle, but don't you get cocky now. If my guess is right, the reason you could perform so many techniques is because of the treasures on you, especially the one that could perform world transformation. Hee, a treasure of such caliber isn't something an Earth ultimate god like you could possess. You'd probably have a lot of visitors at your doorstep very soon if I spread the word about you possessing such treasures. Do you really think you have the chance to do that? Jian Wushuang's voice was as cold as his gaze. Yuan Lei's expression changed and quickly raised his head in the next moment as he noticed something. His eyes were open wide upon raising his head. Extremely powerful energy that previously existed in the world inside the floating scroll painting began to descend from above him. A gigantic palm print began to descend from within the painting's world. That palm print was the Divine Emperor Seal, a technique Jian Wushuang acquired after fusing the first 3 forms of the 9 provinces seal. It was also Jian Wushuang's most powerful offensive move. That's... Yuan Lei's eyes were opened so round and wide in disbelief. He was situated right under the gigantic palm print, and could clearly feel that the palm print's energy could even destroy heaven and earth. That energy was a lot stronger than the pair of gigantic golden folding palms unleashed by Jian Wushuang, which had severely injured him. It was so much stronger. He had enough confidence to protect himself from the pair of golden folding palms. However, the descending giant palm print simply made him feel a touch of helplessness. You actually have a technique that's stronger than the one before? Yuan Lei gave a deadly stare at Jian Wushuang, as though looking at a monster. He truly was a monster. An Earth ultimate god who could perform those techniques time and again was enough to shock him to the core. He thought Jian Wushuang's previous move that severely injured him was already his strongest move. Jian Wushuang unexpectedly had something even more to offer. It was simply unbelievable. The gradually descending giant palm print caused Yuan Lei to even feel that all hope was lost. He tried his best to project his divine power. So was the giant tree behind him, working hard to block the gigantic palm print. However, the end was destruction. The gigantic palm print destroyed everything in its way and covered Yuan Lei's divine body in the blink of an eye. No! Yuan Lei gave out one final hysterical cry before being completely covered by the palm print. Boom boom boom. Infinite divine power rolled violently and shook heaven and earth. After a long while, the surroundings finally calmed and quieted down along with the gradually dispersing gigantic palm print and overwhelming divine power. Jian Wushuang slowly waved his hand as the golden prison and golden god shadow behind him disappeared. The sword principle world around him changed as well, and reverted the area back to its original wasteland. On the other hand, the scroll painting world had just rewrapped itself back and turned into a beam of light before returning to Jian Wushuang's body. Jian Wushuang then kept the 9 infernal crimson divine swords inside his interspatial ring. Everything finally died down. Jian Wushuang exhaled quietly and walked forward to the void that was crushed by the divine emperor seal. There was nothing left in the void, not even a corpse. Yuan Lei's body was completely grounded into microparticles by the divine emperor seal. The only items left were Yuan Lei's interspatial ring and treasure that he had with him, which Jian Wushuang tried his best to keep intact. A true heaven ultimate god, one that deeply understands vitality law and fully equipped with extremely potent rejuvenating skill, has been killed by me. A strange light shone through Jian Wushuang's eyes as he felt a touch of excitement. Heaven ultimate gods was someone way above earth ultimate gods. A regular earth ultimate god, even a peak earth ultimate god, almost had no capabilities to fight back against a heaven ultimate god. Even though his cultivation level was only at peak ultimate god, which was not even an earth ultimate god yet, he managed to slay a heaven ultimate god in the end. Furthermore, it was a respectable duel with a head-on bombardment. It was truly a bombardment. He was purely relying on many hidden maneuvers, the stately painting, and a few secret techniques he had to suppress Yuan Lei before finally using Divine God of Punishment's Divine Destruction and the 9 Provinces Seal's Divine Emperor Seal to bombard him till death. It would be enough to scare many to death if word of the battle had gotten out. The matter remains that he had truly achieved it. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath as the excitement gradually calmed down, and his face turned serious again. Although I've killed Yuan Lei head-on, the reason I could kill him is because of my treasures, secret maneuvers, and hidden techniques. My true capabilities are still a far cry from Yuan Lei's without them. Jian Wushuang told himself while reflecting and summarizing the battle. Although Yuan Lei was a heaven ultimate god, he's average at best, and isn't considered among the stronger ones if I'm not mistaken. He only had rather strong physical defenses, though his techniques were very normal, especially when it comes to offensive maneuvers. If I didn't run into him, but a heaven ultimate god, who's very good at offensive, I'm afraid I won't be in such an advantageous position. At the end of the day, it's really because of my very low cultivation level. My understanding of various laws and sword principles aren't too far from most heaven ultimate gods, but my too low level caused my base divine power being too far behind. Chapter 26-26. Keeping low-key. Jian Wushuang could not do anything about his cultivation level. His cultivation time was really too short, and spanning only a few decades after all. It was already an incredible phenomenon for many to be able to reach the level of peak ultimate god in such a short time. I need enough divine elixir pill to increase my cultivation level. Yuan Lei was a golden chief from the star-picking pavilion, and should have quite valuable items in his interspatial ring. I wonder if there are divine elixir pills among them. Jian Wushuang immediately investigated the interspatial ring that Yuan Lei left behind with a glimmer of hope. Yuan Lei himself was an authentic heaven ultimate god, and also a golden chief in star-picking pavilion. His assets indeed did not disappoint Jian Wushuang, and were faithful to his identity. Merely looking at primordial stones were already 30 million pieces of them. In addition, according to Jian Wushuang's estimation, the various types of cultivation resources had even exceeded the value of those primordial stones. Other than that, Yuan Lei possessed quite a fair bit of treasures as well. There were a dozen heavenly treasures that could help offensive skills cultivation. He even had 2 sets of defensive armor despite being only at the ordinary level heavenly treasures. Unfortunately, there were no unique items like mystical weapons. Not only did Yuan Lei have the divine elixir pill that Jian Wushuang was looking for in his interspatial ring, but there were 3 of them. Adding on the one that I have, and those 3 divine elixir pills, I have 4 pills in total. It'll help me make quite a bit of progress if I cultivated using all of them, but it'll still be quite a distance away from becoming an Earth Ultimate God, thought Jian Wushuang. He had previously estimated that he would need around 20 divine elixir pills for him to make a breakthrough to primary level Earth Ultimate God from peak Ultimate God. 4 pills were only 1/5 of that number. What's this? Jian Wushuang was curious when he found a green-colored jade bottle. The reason that bottle caught his attention was because of the vital energy being emitted from it. He was even more surprised upon realizing he had never seen the material type used to make that jade bottle. There's such strong vital energy coming out from that jade bottle's content. Jian Wushuang immediately removed the cork and extended his soul power into it, and immediately saw the drop of liquid within. The green liquid looked like dews on a flower or grass that could be found during the early mornings, but with a darker color shade. Moreover, Jian Wushuang felt a shock on his body and mind as soon as he saw the green liquid, which caused a grand sight to rise around him. That one drop of liquid contained such immense vital energy that even shocked him greatly. Although I don't know what this is, the content in this unique bottle carries such strong vital energy, only means that it's no ordinary item. Should I find a chance in the future and get someone to appraise it, said Jian Wushuang. No one else in Danyang Holy Domain was more qualified to appraise treasures than Star Picking Pavilion, not even in the surrounding 9 realms of Golden Crow. Every chief in Star Picking Pavilion had an extremely vast knowledge about treasures, as they even specially trained several appraisers. Many extremely rare treasures, including those that had completely disappeared from the 9 realms of Golden Crow, could be identified by the Star Picking Pavilion. For example, the green liquid could easily be taken to Star Picking Pavilion for an appraisal. So long he was willing to spend some money, he would be able to know about the history and function of that green liquid. However, Jian Wushuang had just killed a golden chief from Star Picking Pavilion and acquired the green liquid from him. He did not dare go to Star Picking Pavilion under such circumstances. I'll head home first. I came out just for the auction, but ended up studying the stately painting and transmigration, sword formation after the auction. It's been 5 years since I've left. I wonder how Northern Darkstar Territory is doing under Shiner and Commander Song Hung's management. Jian Wushuang smiled, and very soon left the place for Northern Darkstar Territory. A few men appeared on that very piece of land, which had already turned into ruins only a day after Jian Wushuang left. The purple-robed man leading the group said with a cold voice, "Someone sensed a humongous fluctuation of divine power in this area. It seems like a big fight really took place here with both sides, seems to have incredible capabilities, based on the marks left on the battlefield. Most probably an epic battle at the Heaven Ultimate God scale. On top of that, even though it's been a moment, the battlefield is still filled with a thick vital energy. It's probably left behind by Yuan Lei who studies the vitality law." The purple-robed man was the Star Picking Pavilion supervisor. As for the 3 men following him, 2 of them were Golden Chief, while the other one was the Black Chief who received Jian Wushuang. "Are you sure Yuan Lei was going after the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord, and not someone else?" The purple supervisor looked at the Black Chief. "Positive." The Black Chief nodded solemnly. Master Yuan Lei had already spotted the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord early on in the auction, but for some reason did not take action. The Territorial Lord came once again at that time to purchase 9 Infernal Crimson Divine Swords before leaving. We completely lost contact with Master Yuan Lei soon after with him, not even replying to our messages. The purple-robed supervisor squinted as he knew the reason why Yuan Lei did not take action. It was because Yuan Lei and the two golden chiefs were receiving orders from Senior Meng, and he naturally could not walk away. Yuan Lei's probably dead since he fought against someone here, and we no longer heard from him thereafter. The Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord is only a high-level Earth Ultimate God. Even though he obtained Sword Lord Tong Xin's Transmigration Sword Formation, it'll be impossible for him to kill Yuan Lei. There has to be someone else who killed him, said the purple-robed supervisor. However, all the experts had left since the auction was over according to our intelligence. There are currently only a limited number of Heaven Ultimate Gods in Narcissus territory other than us, and these Heaven Ultimate Gods having no reason nor the opportunity to kill Yuan Lei, said one of the Golden Chiefs. Let's just stop here and don't investigate further regardless of who did it, said the purple supervisor immediately. Don't investigate further? The two Golden Chiefs were slightly surprised. A star-picking pavilion Golden Chief dying was a big deal, and yet the supervisor had no intentions to investigate further? This Yuan Lei was looking for trouble anyway. He immediately followed the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord as soon as he stepped out of Star-Picking Pavilion. Although they may have a minor private grudge, he still defied our rules, and we have nothing much to say now with him being killed. Furthermore, it'll defile our reputation if word about this matter goes around, so we'd better keep this matter low-key. Chapter 26-27, Blood Gem. We can covertly investigate Yuan Lei's death, but do keep it that way. Other than that, we can also keep an eye on the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord. Although he doesn't have the capabilities to kill Yuan Lei, he probably has something to do with his death after all, said the purple supervisor. Aye. The two Golden Chiefs behind immediately nodded. They left very soon. Northern Darkstar Territory. Jian Wushuang exited through a wormhole with a flash. I've returned. He exhaled and began gliding towards his territorial lord residence. Jian Wushuang passed by the official army barracks along the way. He suddenly paused as he glided above the barracks. How come there are only so few of them? Jian Wushuang frowned while overlooking the barracks below. There were 10 battalions in the official army, with each battalion consisting of 1,000 strong. There should have been a total of 10,000 men. However, as Jian Wushuang's soul power expanded, he could sense there were only 1,000 men in the barracks, which constituted only one battalion. This was the official army barracks, which would normally still have a large number of soldiers, holding their positions in case something happens, even when they received a big mission. Furthermore, there should have been 3 or 4 battalions permanently in the barracks, but there was only a single battalion at that moment. Did something happen? Jian Wushuang wondered before increasing his speed toward the territorial lord residence. Jian Wushuang had already descended in a manner, and noticed that the residence did not change much. Jian Wushuang called out, Shiner. Master, you're back? Xiao Tiexin saw Jian Wushuang and smiled in surprise. I just returned and I realized there was only one battalion left when I passed by the official army barracks. What's going on? Did something happen? Jian Wushuang asked. Xiao Tiexin nodded and said, something indeed happened. A blood gem mineral vein was discovered in the Starfire Wilderness within our territory a year ago. Commander Song Hung immediately brought 2 battalions over when he received the news. But who knew they'd find that someone has already taken over the mineral vein upon their arrival? Taken over? Jian Wushuang was shocked. The official army had the strength to take over everything in Northern Darkstar territory. Who had the nerves to rob them of the mineral vein? It's our territory's direct neighbor, Green Flame Star territory. Moreover, Starfire Wilderness is coincidentally located at the border between Northern Darkstar territory and Green Flame Star territory. Their territorial lord received the news faster than us, and sent their official army ahead of us the very moment news about the blood gem mineral vein began spreading. The mineral vein had already been taken over by the Green Flame Star territory's official army by the time Commander Song Hung arrived with his men. Commander Song Hung naturally was not ready to give up, so he argued with them, and a fight consequently broke out. The two official armies were similar in battle strength, But the Green Flame Territorial Lord later took matters into his own hands. He's the strongest territorial lord among those other territories around us. A peak Earth ultimate god. Commander Song Hung of course fell into an absolute disadvantage with him joining the battle. Commander Song Hung later mobilized 9 battalions over out of necessity, and we can finally fight against the Green Flame territory as equals by relying on the numbers advantage. It seems that the Blood Gem mineral vein is currently being split 50-50 between Northern Dark Star territory and Green Flame Star territory, with each mining their gems, said Xiao Tiexin. Is that so? Jian Wushuang looked grim. He had heard of Blood Gem being a very high-leveled instrument cultivation material. The blood gems were usually mined to cultivate heavenly treasures, with only a very limited amount used for peak earthly treasures cultivation. In normal circumstances, only 10,000 pounds of blood gems was needed to cultivate a heavenly treasure. A complete blood gem mineral vein perhaps contained more than 10,000 pounds of blood gems. Its value was naturally quite astonishing. Jian Wushuang sneered. The mineral vein is found within our territory, yet the Green Flame Territorial Lord has the nerves to lead his official army to our land and steal it. Hee. How dare he look down upon the Northern Dark Star Territorial Lord. However, he knew that the Green Flame Territorial Lord was a peak Earth ultimate god and himself. Everyone knew about Jian Wushuang's battle strength, being at most only in the high-level Earth ultimate god realm, from killing San Shouwang, before leaving Northern Dark Star territory. It was only normal that the Green Flame Star Territorial Lord did not take him seriously. Shiner, you stay here while I make a trip to Starfire Wilderness, said Jian Wushuang. Master, be careful. The Green Flame Star Territorial Lord is a peak Earth ultimate god after all, reminded Xiao Tiexin. Haha, I understand. Jian Wushuang smiled, but had to disagree deep inside. Why worry about a peak Earth ultimate god when he could even head-on kill a heaven ultimate god? Starfire Wilderness was just a regular wilderness, located at the edge of Northern Dark Star territory. However, it was at that exact location an incredibly valuable blood gem mineral vein was discovered in the huge mountains. One that made the Green Flame Star Territorial Lord cross boundaries to fight for. The mountains were humongous, and the entire mineral vein was similarly also incredibly huge. The mineral vein began on both ends of the mountains which a camp had been respectively built. Several commanders from the official army were gathered together in one of the camps. Song Hung sat there and exclaimed, "It's too huge. This blood gem mineral vein is truly too huge. The mineral vein that we managed to control is only 40% of the entire thing. According to early estimation, the blood gems extended underground that has been discovered is already more than 1 billion pounds, and could even be a lot more. Blood gems are used for cultivating heavenly treasures. In the market, their value is also truly shocking. A pound of blood gems will cost 10 primordial stones, while 1 billion pounds of the blood gem will exceed 10 billion primordial stones." Wow! The commanders around him were in disbelief. 1 million primordial stones were already considered an astronomical amount to those commanders, who were only at peak ultimate god. What about 10 billion? They could not even begin to fathom the concept of it. Our strength is unfortunately limited, and 40% is the most we're able to keep in control. The remaining 60% falls under the Green Flame Star Territory official army's control. Furthermore, the Green Flame Star Territorial Lord has already known the value of the mineral vein, and will definitely mobilize even more personnel over from the Green Flame Star territory. I'm afraid that we can't even hold on to this 40% by then, said Song Hung coldly. Chapter 26-28. Territorial Lord returns. Song Hung and the others were only able to occupy 40% of the blood gem mineral vein, due to their larger military size advantage. Song Hung had mobilized 9 out of 10 Northern Dark Star Territory official army battalions, and formed a military formation with considerably strong combat power. On the other hand, the Green Flame Star Territory was fighting outside of his territory, and was only able to mobilize 5 battalions for the battle. However, the peak earthly ultimate god Green Flame Territorial Lord managed to help his team gain an absolute advantage with his exceptional strength. However, Song Hung and the others would be at a greater disadvantage if the Green Flame Territorial Lord was able to bring in 1 or 2 more army battalions from the Green Flame Star territory, as that would make it rather impossible for them to continue occupying 40% of the mineral vein. It's simply too much for the Green Flame Territorial Lord to not only rely on his exceptional personal strength, but also bring his army into our territory to rob the mineral vein. It's unfortunate that our Territorial Lord isn't here. Otherwise, the Green Flame Territorial Lord won't dare to be so presumptuous. Not necessarily. Although our Territorial Lord is powerful, his combat prowess is only at the level of a high-level Earth Ultimate God. There's still quite a big gap between him and the Green Flame Territorial Lord. I'm afraid our Territorial Lord might have to bow down to the Green Flame Territorial Lord if the two of them meet and fight. The commanders were in a discussion, and soon fell silent at the end of their discussion. Even if the military strength of the two territories were equivalent, their territorial lords indeed had different strengths. The world was a place where spoils belonged to the victors. Suddenly, "What are you guys discussing?" An indifferent voice sounded. Song Hung and the other commanders were startled. They immediately turned around to look at the source of the sound. They had not noticed a young man wearing golden robes and carrying a longsword had appeared. Territorial Lord. Song Hung was the first to react and immediately saluted respectfully. "A pleasure to meet the Territorial Lord." The other commanders saluted and felt a little apprehensive. The feeling was heightened as cold sweat beaded on them when they were reminded that they were speaking ill of their Territorial Lord just moments ago. They were worried if Jian Wushuang heard what they just said. Jian Wushuang did hear their discussion, but he could care less. "Commander Song Hung, tell me what's going on with the blood gem mineral vein at this moment?" Jian Wushuang sat down next to the table. Song Hung immediately explained the situation in great detail. 1 billion caddies. Even Jian Wushuang was shocked to hear the figures. "This is just the amount of blood gems from the mineral vein we have discovered for the time being. There are still many that haven't been discovered. We currently only occupy 40% of the blood gems, whereas 60% is with the Green Flame Territorial Lord. If the number of blood gems in the entire mineral vein added up to billions, then its value will be a few tens of billion primordial stones," said Song Hung. "It's a huge blood gem mineral vein." Jian Wushuang secretly smacked his tongue, but kept a calm front. "This mineral vein is way too valuable. Although it appears within our star territory, we can't take control of the entire mineral vein with our capabilities alone. I believe that people from Crimson Stone Fort will come forward sooner or later." Jian Wushuang knew very well that the lucrative mineral vein worth tens of billion primordial stones would be very appealing to top factions in Danyang Holy Domain. On the other hand, the Crimson Stone Fort was the official ruler of Danyang Holy Domain, with every stellar region and territorial lord being appointed and administered by them. The Crimson Stone Fort would send an expert to retrieve the high-valued mineral vein in northern Darkstar territory. Song Hung nodded in agreement. The largest winner from the mineral vein's appearance will be the Crimson Stone Fort, but they'll need miners to get the blood gems. Therefore, they'll naturally source manpower from northern Darkstar territory and entrust our official army to be responsible for monitoring the mining process until its completion. I suppose the territorial lord and official army will be able to gain a lot of benefits during that time, as Crimson Stone Fort will usually leave us some gravy when they take the meat. The current problem with the Green Flame Star territory is their actions of taking away even our last bit of gravy. Jian Wushuang cracked a faint smile, as Song Hung's metaphor was very appropriate. They could only pick up the leftovers after Crimson Stone Fort had collected their share of the benefit. How could they be able to accept the Green Flame Star territory rushing in and taking a cut of their portion? "Let's go and meet the Green Flame Territorial Lord," said Jian Wushuang with a smile. Song Hung did not act immediately from puzzlement. "Master, the Green Flame Territorial Lord is a peak Earth Ultimate God. I hear he's very powerful." "I know." Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, Take me to him. Song Hung stopped hesitating after noticing Jian Wushuang's confidence, and immediately set off to lead the way. Jian Wushuang soon arrived at the void above the camp on the mine's other end. There were many soldiers from the Green Flame Star Territory's official army in the camp. Master, the Green Flame Territorial Lord is in this camp, said Song Hung. Jian Wushuang nodded as he had sensed an extremely tyrannical aura from the camp. Green Flame Territorial Lord, Jian Wushuang called out as his magnificent voice resounded vigorously throughout heaven and earth, before naturally spreading toward the huge camp ahead. The camp immediately went into a commotion, and a few figures soon rose into the void with a ragged silver-haired old man in a loose robe leading. The silver-haired old man was none other than the Green Flame Territorial Lord. The Green Flame Territorial Lord noticed Jian Wushuang as soon as he appeared in the void. Carrying a long sword while wearing golden robes, you must be the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord Jian Yi. The Green Flame Territorial Lord folded his hands and looked at Jian Wushuang with a somewhat condescending attitude. I'm indeed Jian Yi. I've also heard about you, Green Flame Territorial Lord, and always wanted to visit you, but something unfortunate came up. My apologies that you had to make the trip instead. Jian Wushuang started with a friendly greeting, before going into a serious tone. However, I would have welcomed you if you're visiting alone, but I'm afraid it's too much for you to bring along 5 army battalions. Don't get me wrong, I heard there's a huge blood gem mineral vein in the Starfire Wilderness, and am worried it might fall into the wrong hands. Hence I came forth with my people to protect this area while you're away, said Green Flame Territorial Lord with a smile. Chapter 26-29. The embarrassed Green Flame Territorial Lord protect it? I'll have to thank you then, Green Flame Territorial Lord, replied Jian Wushuang. You don't have to. The Northern Darkstar Territory and our Green Flame Star Territory are connected geographically. We should be helping each other, teased the Green Flame Territorial Lord. In this case, you won't have to protect the blood gem mineral vein anymore now that I've returned. You may now leave, said Jian Wushuang. That won't do. The Green Flame Territorial Lord shook his head. I've reported to Crimson Stone Fort about the blood gem mineral vein on your way back here. The Crimson Stone Fort has also dispatched some experts to retrieve this, and had specifically ordered us to take good care of it before their arrival. Therefore, all of you will have to wait for Crimson Stone Fort's representatives. Jian Wushuang's expression turned cold after hearing that. It seems the Green Flame Star Territory isn't going to leave. I can only use a little trick to make you leave if that's the case. Did you ask me to leave? You're quite confident, but I don't know where your confidence is coming from. The Green Flame Territorial Lord sneered, and could not care less about Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was not angry, but merely flipped his palm slowly. Buzz! 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 9 black infernal crimson divine swords appeared out of thin air in the void before Jian Wushuang. Those 9 infernal crimson divine swords each carried an infinite amount of transmigration strength. Are you going to fight? With that? The Green Flame Territorial Lord said disdainfully. Master, Song Hung, and the other commanders frowned. However, Jian Wushuang merely smiled faintly before those 9 black infernal crimson divine swords instantly transformed into 9 huge meteorites, and fiercely slammed toward the Green Flame Territorial Lord ahead. The Green Flame Territorial Lord stood calmly on the spot, until the 9 huge meteorites appeared in front of him. His eyes narrowed slightly when the meteorites' power spread out. These 9 black swords seemed quite powerful. The Green Flame Territorial Lord immediately took a shot, and slammed the 9 swords with a sledgehammer that appeared in his hands. A peak Earth Ultimate God's divine power completely exploded with shocking power. Clang! 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 After 9 continuous clanging sounds, the 9 huge meteorites transformed from the infernal crimson divine sword were sent flying out. The meteorites' terrifying power then collided with the Green Flame Territorial Lord, and was forced to retreat a few steps backward. This kid seems to be much stronger than an ordinary high-level Earth Ultimate Gods. The Green Flame Territorial Lord held his hands together, and prepared to make a move. Suddenly, congeal! Jian Wushuang only said a one-word command before the 9 infernal crimson divine swords instantly overlapped at an astonishing speed and caused a huge endless reincarnation passage to appear out of nowhere. A black divine sword encased in transmigration strength shot out from the end of that channel. The black divine sword was the result of a perfect sword formation made from the 9 overlapping infernal crimson divine swords. Boom! The black divine sword was like a huge awl with a terrifying power that penetrated the void and instantly appeared in front of the green flame territorial lord. This power! The green flame territorial lord was shocked upon feeling the power contained therein, the black divine sword that was much stronger than him executing a blow with his full strength. He was so horrified that he did not have much time to think and could only spontaneously swing the large hammer in his hand as the ripples spread out before firing a series of attacks. Boom! There was a loud noise as terrifying powers erupted from the black divine sword, and the large hammer broke away from the green flame territorial lord's hand for the first time. The black divine sword did not stop, but continued to bombard the green flame territorial lord's divine body. Puff! The green flame territorial lord shook slightly before spewing out a big mouthful of blood. His complexion instantly paled along with his Bodhi's divine power breath, dropped to an extremely low level. Buzz! The transmigration sword formation, formed from the 9 overlapping infernal crimson divine swords, returned to Jian Wushuang. Green flame territorial lord, I'll give you a chance, 10 breaths. You and your people are to immediately return to the green flame star territory within just 10 breaths of time. Otherwise you'll lie here forever. Jian Wushuang folded his hands behind his back with his extremely cold gaze as he stared at the green flame territorial lord. His mighty voice reverberated throughout heaven and earth. The green flame territorial lord was trembling as he met Jian Wushuang's gaze. Though his eyes were filled with resentment, they were filled with even more fear and reverent awe. Jian Wushuang had just displayed a terrifying strength level, which was too strong. The green flame territorial lord was perplexed as he could see that Jian Wushuang was only a high-level earth ultimate god. Yet Jian Wushuang's sword formation defeated him in an instant. The green flame territorial lord would probably be dead had Jian Wushuang not held back his strength. He knew that Jian Wushuang's strength level was far beyond his own. He dared not defy Jian Wushuang's command for him and his people to leave within 10 breaths. Let's go! The green flame territorial lord immediately ordered the green flame star territory official army to retreat. The green flame territorial lord along with his official army quickly left within a few breaths toward the green flame star territory. The commanders of the northern dark star territory watched in awe and were completely stunned. They were just saying that Jian Wushuang would not be able to change anything due to his inferior high-level Earth Ultimate God battle strength against the peak Earth Ultimate God Green Flame Territorial Lord, even if he returned. Jian Wushuang surprisingly made a boldly lightning fast shot and defeated the Green Flame Territorial Lord in the blink of an eye. The strength gap was too wide apart. Jian Wushuang's strength completely exceeded their expectations. Our Territorial Lord has instantly defeated the Peak Earth Ultimate God Green Flame Territorial Lord. He's so powerful. I remember he was far from being this powerful when he fought San Shouwang not long ago. It didn't take long for him to improve until this level, right? He's so powerful. The commanders looked at Jian Wushuang with deep awe and reverence. Song Heng. Jian Wushuang glanced at Song Heng. Bring some people to take over the mineral vein and try to figure out in the shortest time possible the quantity of blood gem we have in the mineral vein, since the Green Flame Star Territory's people are gone. Yes. Song Heng obeyed the order and immediately left with some people to do the surveying before presenting the results quite soon to Jian Wushuang. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.